I still believe that the term that I'm very guilty of using, world whiskey, is a wee bit clumsy. In a perspective, as if all the whiskey in the world is one homogeneous big blob and Scotch is the other part, and it's not like that at all. There's whiskey making tradition everywhere these days, and it's becoming more and more and more, and it's becoming more mature as well as numbers. And I think that's an interesting thing because in the past, I think we were caveating by saying, "Oh, quite interesting for being young whiskies," or, "No, these are quite interesting considering that they're not Scotch whiskies," right? It's a wee bit patronising, I think. But we were using Scotch to hold them to account back then as the upstarts. Things have moved on to such an extent today that in 2025, I think there's a danger that we could hold up a lot of these so-called world whiskies and hold Scotch to account. Have we reached that point yet? Tonight, we're gonna be talking about Planet Scotch. I'm looking forward to it, and I'll see you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Thursday night. Welcome to the vPub. Hope you're all doing very, very well. Let me just point out tonight that my experience in past years of the vPub tells me that we might be in for a quieter session tonight. And that makes perfect sense. It's not just because I've chosen to switch up the subject matter and the topic into something that's less interesting. It's something that's potentially less interesting to my community, the community that I've spent the last 8 years now, well, getting close to 8 years, building. And that's been built around a core of a passion and an interest and a pursuit of Scotch whisky, specifically Scotch malt whisky, if we're honest. Of course, most vPubs digress off the Scotch malt whisky lane pretty much every episode at some point in the topic, right? But the core is built around the appreciation and the enjoyment of Scotch single malt whisky. And I put it to you that I think part of the global explosion and interest in whisky that's happened in the last few decades is firmly, let's not say directly part of or directly because of, but it has a very strong correlation with a growing appreciation of brown spirits, certainly. But I put it to you that it's a growing appreciation of the whiskies that were produced in Scotland. I think that Scotland, not everywhere, not all of the time, but I think it would be a surprising amount of times that the growth and the interest and the enjoyment and appreciation, the connoisseurship, let's say, of whiskey generally can trace its roots back to potentially coming out of an interest born in Scotch whisky. Maybe that's a wee bit an exaggeration or hyperbole. It doesn't really matter to what we're talking about tonight, because what we're going to be talking about tonight are where we sit in 2025 with more variety than we've ever had domestically, wherever we may be living. And that means that there's more variety for anybody who wants to explore outside of their immediate borders, let's say. What I have discovered, and I think it's not snuck up on me, but it's more potent a proposition than I expected it to be when you start to look into it, is how many of these global world distilleries are making things that are not only very close to in spirit and style and character as Scotch whisky, but they are very close to them in terms of a value proposition, a quality spirit, a good drink, and they're becoming very, very mature. And I'm not talking about distilleries like Kavalan in Taiwan and things that are well established. I'm not speaking about the Japanese distilleries. I'm not even speaking right now about the American distilleries and the explosion in American single malt. I'm speaking about everywhere you look. Everywhere you look, even if we just stuck to malt whiskey, I really don't know how Ingvar does it every year, how he manages to find space to keep this book at the size and the weight it needs to be in order to distribute it globally and things like that, and keep it at its price point, because it must be really, really tough for him to keep up. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on malt distilleries. I think if we open it up more than that, it's really difficult to tie down. This will be a series that could potentially have a follow-up and things like that in the future and cover more and more countries, more and more distilleries. But tonight we're going to be focusing on malt. And I think that makes sense, especially when I'm talking about Planet Scotch. I'm talking about us and our community and our realm, the stuff that we pursue, and that tends to be very focused, as I say, on malt whiskey. Anyway, I'll kind of go into the topic a wee bit more after I've done what we always like to do and jump in to the lounge and welcome some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. How are you all doing? Like I say, I'm pretty. How many have we got in? There we go, 208. So it's probably... well, it was within expectations. Listen, it takes 15 or 20 minutes for you all to get in and get comfortable and things like that. I know, so it will go up. But I fully expect tonight, because I'm celebrating World Whiskies, to be a quieter episode. And if that's the case, I hope that we manage to uncover one or two things tonight that's really worthwhile. Because that would mean for the people that are here, they get a chance to pick up something that would otherwise be missed. Let's see how you're all doing. Some of the beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. I'm scrolling back up and I'm going to pick up the orange. So if you're trying to get my attention, type Aquavite or at Aquavite. Cheers, everyone, and welcome. How are y'all? Just as I lose the chat. Why does that happen? Quick refresh. Yeah, this is happening more and more recently. I don't know if it's the YouTube side. Here we go. We've got it back. Derek McGrainer is in. Good to see you, buddy. Saying good evening, folks. Good evening, Gaffer. It's nice to welcome you, Derek. How are things over in Ireland? It's tough for you to keep up with all the whiskey things that's happening over there as well, isn't it? It's crazy times. I don't know how healthy it is right now, but you've certainly got variety, more than you've ever had. Gabriel Wilding is saying good evening, and all you barflies. Gabriel's down south in England. Again, an absolute explosion of distilleries, the majority of them making malt whiskey. Billy Bennett is saying, hi Roy, interesting topic that I'm looking forward to. To go with the topic in my glass, there's a pretty good 4-year-old Norwegian single malt from Fedi Ocean Distillery. That's pretty on point. I was actually in the Nordics just last weekend. I didn't get to that particular distillery. In fact, we were in Oslo. The closest distillery to us was actually in Sweden. But more about that in a wee minute. Nice to have you in, Billy. Falsgraf is saying good evening, Roy, Aquavite and everyone. Just coming in at the right second. Looking forward, however, I do stay confined to Scotch, Irish and German-speaking regions. More is too crowded for me. I think that can be true for a lot of people. We pick our favourites, we pick our lanes. But I think it's nice to reach out a wee bit, to explore a little bit and try and fathom, does that mean that we're in the right lane? You know, are we still in the best stuff? And you know, it's more than just the cost and the price, the flavour, the availability. There's so much more romance to this passion that so listen, everybody's got their own reasons for pursuing what they want to pursue. I just like to come up with topics that are rattling around in my head that I like to explore from time to time. Whiskey Weekend Drama saying, sorry, I have a Coquerin in the glass for now, Roy, but later on I'll find something Dutch. Good for you, Harold. Maybe a clay whiskey is the Dutch whiskey, maybe a Millstone, something like that. Nice to have you in, Harold. I hope you're doing well, and I hope the Coquerin's going down well. Christoph is getting ready with some Emmer cast strength from southern Germany, Aquavite. Looking forward to this topic. Emmer, I've not even heard of it, Christoph. I hope it's something that you're enjoying. Amazing. Hey, everyone. Happy Thursday, says Gordon Fraser. Nice to have you in, buddy. How are you keeping? I hope you're doing well. And Peter is saying, evening, barman. Good as always to have you behind the bar. I'll pour myself some I'll pour myself some Scotch, though. So that's a Dutchman. We wouldn't expect Frank Peathead to be doing anything else other than a Scotch. And listen, if you're hanging out with us tonight and you're having a Scotch whiskey, that's entirely your prerogative. If you're fortunate enough to have a whisky at all as you're watching along, far be it from me to try and influence that, is whatever you're enjoying. Cheers, Frank. Good to have you in, buddy. Ali is here. Good to see you, Ali. Hope you're keeping well. Dave Barnes is here too. If you're on the screen, it's guaranteed to be interesting. You flatter me, Dave. Let's judge me after we've gone through a couple of the topics tonight. Christian Jensen saying, I'm scrambling to pour some Armoric 15 to be on theme. I'm chasing that one down, Christian. I'd love to grab a bottle of it. I rinsed my bottle of 10-year-old Armoric French whiskey. I loved pouring it for people. And that would have been a perfect one to feature in the lineup tonight, because not only was it a very good quality whiskey that's come of age, it's mature now. You've tried their 15-year-old. I was on the 10. But I also felt that you could easily pour that for a lot of people and convince them that it was a half-decent Scotch whiskey. I suspect the 15-year-old could potentially be even better as long as there's not too much wood influence in it. Christian, how are you getting on with it? Justin Wan is saying, I'm not sure what would be on theme tonight. Poured a Glentalkers and it's gorgeous liquid. Justin, you're on theme tonight. Perfect. As good as anything. Richard Kelly saying, good evening, Aquavita and rest of the barflies. Just a swift half for me tonight. I'm up early in the morning, so we'll catch up on replay. Hey, I've got an early morning as well tomorrow, Richard. Got to try and keep things neat tonight. Let's see if I can manage. But listen, if you end up picking up on the replay, you and everybody else that does so, I'm eternally grateful to you all. Thank you so much. Gene Kelly saying, hi, Roy and Philip Barflies. My selection of non-Scotch single malts is somewhat limited. There's a guy coming from the States, obviously, and he's saying starting with an Indri and a Cotswolds. Well, that's not bad at all. You've got an Indian malt whiskey on the go there and an English malt whiskey on the go. Thank you for trying to be on theme, Gene, but whatever you're enjoying, right, buddy? Jason is saying, evening, Roy and Philip Barflies. Jason Bradford, you did a big favour for me recently, buddy. I know we're quits now. I think that the lengths that you went to at such short notice for me in order to indulge me and my brother is I'm going to raise a glass just to say thanks now that I see you in, buddy. Cheers, Jason. Thank you. Arnie Tiger is saying, good whiskey knows no borders. Oh, I like it. I love it, in fact. Very on theme and on character for me as well, I would say. Jimmy Jazz is saying, good evening, Aquavita. Really enjoying a Virginia distillery. Port cask finished blend. Virginia blended with Scotch, so no wonder I love it. Okay, I wonder if it was just purely Virginia, if you'd still be enjoying it as much, though, Jimmy. I know you're a Scotch lover, but you're a cracking guy having the vPub on regular occurrence. I don't mind what's in the glass. Let us know how you're getting on with it. I wonder what Scotch is even in that. Mirko is saying, hello, Roy. And hello, Barflies. On my way back home from the Oktoberfest. Cheers to all of you. Picked up a wee picture of you with a beer, an on-theme beer in your hand as well earlier today, Mirko. I hope you're feeling good, and I hope it was a good day out. The Umbuja, that's was it Nigerian whiskey? Was a good tip. Not my favourite whiskey, but it was a teachable experience. So the smoky Umbuja, I think it was Nigerian, oh my goodness, how can I have forgotten? Famously on the vPub a couple of times, one time with Roddy, but the smoked version of that, they burn elephant dung in order to dry the barley. So the phenols are directly a result of burning elephant dung. I found it better than just an interesting whiskey. Mike Marizzi is saying good evening and good morning. Here to your colleagues for Aussie single malts. Mike, we'll do our best. But I tell you, Australian malt whiskies, Tasmanian malt whiskies, they're not easy to come by. Fortunately, there's a generous community out there. More to come. Tom Ferrari saying, evening, Aquavita. Good to see you. Looking forward to the vPub. Folks like White Peak, Smogen, and Amrut and other world whiskies challenge distilleries in Scotland and Ireland up to their game. So you're enjoying White Peak from England, Smogen in Sweden, more to follow, and Amrut and other world whiskies. So you're enjoying Amrut Indian as well. That's nice, and I think it's nice to keep an open mind. A lot of you will be trying these world whiskies as part of a blind tasting, or because somebody wants to surprise you, or maybe because you are a wee bit of an explorer and you like to switch it up from time to time. I would say that even if it's yourself and you've got it on hand, pour it for yourself blind from time to time. I think that a lot of them are very obvious and they have very different characters to our typical Scotch styles. However, sometimes some of them are parading for excellent, excellent Scotch whiskies. That's not to say that if they weren't doing that, they wouldn't be excellent. But it's remarkable to me, and it makes me feel like that there's been some kind of inspiration, desire, or passion, maybe from a Scotch whiskey loving background, that's made these people essentially go out and build Scotch distilleries, or distilleries making a product in the style of or an homage to Scotch whisky wherever they live. Sean is saying, evening, Roy. I've seen many bottles of Taiwanese malt from SMWS, but never took the plunge. Any featuring tonight? We won't be going to the island of Taiwan tonight, Sean. Like I say, I think this could be something that we picked up again in the future. I tend to follow my mood, though, and maybe what bottles I've got on hand. No Taiwanese tonight. I hope there's no spoilers there. Ian Williamson is, good evening, Roy, and you lovely barflies. Wireworks special waters in our glasses tonight. Perfect. We got to try that in Glasgow last year, actually. And I thought it was a cracking pourry and good for you. Our back gardener saying, good evening, Aquavita and barflies. Got a 17-year-old bottling of Bushmills in a glass, non-chill filtered, no added colour from Celtic Whisky Shop in Dublin, Slancha. Slancha, right back at you. Again, I think a wee bit on theme. Just the chat jumps. Christoph is saying, I made a small mistake. Emmer is the grain, Finch is the distillery. Okay. Finch I've heard of. I've still not tried anything from it. And Emmer is the grain. I wonder what is that, barley strain? Bud Jenkins is saying, greetings from the drizzly Pacific Northwest. Perfect weather for a dram. And yes, Scotch is my preference, period. That's okay, Bud. It's wonderful to have you in, buddy. I hope you're keeping well. David in Portugal saying, evening, having some Lefroy 10. If there's something that Scotland is far better at, it's the peated drams, even though peat is as abundant as my attention to your content. Thank you, David. Thank you. And we've covered that kind of world peat topic on the vPub before, where we've gone all over the world to explore how different peated styles are getting their peat. Are they importing the barley from Scotland? Are they importing the peat from Scotland in some cases? Are they using local peat? Or are they using other methods to get the smoke out of their whiskey? But tonight, I think we can just focus on simpler themes around malt. Tom B is saying, having some peated new make from a tiny distillery in Somerset this evening. Retribution. Very interesting stuff. What's more interesting, Tom B, I think that might be the first time I've welcomed you in. Tom, if it is, welcome, my friend. And if it's not, apologies for forgetting. But it's nice to have you. Gary Field is saying, managed to get down to White Peak yet. No, I'm delinquent. The invite is long-standing. To be honest with you, I'm delinquent on a few invites. I've got invites from people that it's just wonderful. I have to pinch myself to consider that these people are even interested in wanting to spend time with me or whatever. And I'm delinquent at getting close to them. There's just so many whiskey projects, so many whiskey topics. The hours of the week are just so rammed full already. And, you know, I've got a life and a family and a house and all the other things that go on as well. And when you do whiskey projects, especially when you travel, you can't really go and come back in the same day. It tends to be at least an overnight, right? Alistair Gray has been generous, supporting me with it as part of the Barflies, and he sent out 5 Aquavita gift memberships, along with James DeGiulio as well, sent out 10 Aquavita gift memberships. Alistair and James, thank you very much for your support. 15 random people in the chat through Alistair and James's generosity are going to get access to the Barflies membership tier on YouTube, at least for the next month. And what that allows them to do is, of course, get the wee barfly, a coloured barfly emoji next to their name and things, or loyalty badge, I should say, but also access to the channel-themed emoji, you know, whiskey glasses and things to colour up the chat, especially when we're playing along with a quiz, or you want to just kind of talk about or colour up the discussion in the live chat. That'll happen in the live chat or in the comments underneath as well. What it does more than anything, though, is it keeps all the Google ads away from the Aquavita channel. I get more support from the Aquavita Barflies than I ever got from Google's ad revenue sharing. Thank you all. Eric Way is in. Super to see you, Eric. He's bought me a dram as well. You generous man. He said, is it true that the Oz was originally Outer Space Whiskey Alien Awards? Oh, busted as such, but we've stolen the idea now and they're not getting it back. We're coming up for 5 years, Eric. 5 years. Remains to be seen how Ralphie and I feel about it after the 5-year mark. We're very buoyant. We're very keen to get to share with you on Saturday this weekend. The Online Scotch Whisky Awards nomination show goes out, and we'll reveal the nominations for 2025. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be interesting to see what the mix is. I mean, I always love to see the kind of consistency there and the strong stalwarts holding firm every year or kind of making reappearances. But I think what I always want to see, and I think what excites me from a personal perspective, is when new things break through. And I think that's what the Oswis should kind of try to do is represent not just Scotch whisky now, but as Scotch whisky develops and morphs and it changes over time. Eric, it's good to have you as part of the initiative, buddy, and it's good to have you here, my friend. Thank you for your dram, Eric. Also a dram from Jimmy Legg as well, saying, I have no whisky, sad face. I'll have to depend on you for entertainment. Let's be honest, Jimmy. I know you're traveling, you're away out in, was it Gander or somewhere? I can't remember now. But you're traveling on the east coast of Canada, aren't you? But that means that you would only be sitting nosing it anyway, right? You would hardly have any sips. You would just have your nose. So just go from memory. Jimmy, Eric, Alistair and James, thanks for your support, everyone. Cheers. Emmer is an old strain of wheat, one of the earliest grains cultivated, apparently. I don't know the English name, unfortunately. Thank you, Christoph, for even trying to answer the question for me. I was just wondering out loud. Alistair McPhail is saying, hello, one and all, Aquavite Roy. Whiskey sans frontières. Exactly that. Somebody else said it more in a kind of English, but that's what we're going to be exploring tonight. In the glass, I've actually got a Canadian whiskey, and I don't think I'm going to spend much time talking about this specific distillery. I've got another Canadian whiskey off to the side, but I think I'm going to use these things to start the topic off by trying to define what Scotch is. And if I'm going to talk about Planet Scotch and other places in the world that are making similar things to Scotch, not identical, absolutely not identical. It doesn't have to be, and arguably it shouldn't be. What do I mean by that? And I think that would be a good as place as any to start. I'll tell you what's in the glass first. I have got a 46% ABV. Yeah, this is a gift from my friend Graham Young, the Canadian superstar that is Graham Young. And this is Macaloni's single cask selection, which is interesting. It's been reduced as a single cask to 46. It's got phenols parts per million of 54. I would suggest that's not in the glass. I think that would be in the malt. There's a cask number here, a bottle number, all of it. But what we've got here is a single malt whiskey made in the west coast of Canada, and it's matured in Muscatel, European oak Muscatel barriques. So here we go, Macaloni's Island Distillery. Now, Macaloni's to me sounds like it could be a Scottish name, could be more, I would probably associate it more with an Irish name, that type of thing. But this is absolutely Canadian whiskey. It's made on Vancouver Island, hence the name Island Distillery. Now, they had a little bit of a run-in with the Scotch Whisky Association, specifically with an argument over how they were branding their product. I'll show you a previous branding, also a gift from Graham. You might be able to see a wee difference here. This is the one that caused the problem. Macaloni's Caledonian Glenloy. This is a much higher ABV. This is coming in. This is a much more of a kind of cask vatting here, a mix of casks from ex-bourbon, recharred red wine, and sherry casks. Alcohol, 57.8% ABV. There's no peat or smoke in this one at all. This is batch number 5 for those of you that's interested. But here you can see where it clearly says Glenloy, Island Single Malt Whiskey. Believe it or not, this attracted the ire of the body that Scotland has to look after the interests of Scotch whisky, but also ostensibly to look after the interests of the consumer, so that consumers can understand and enjoy what Scotch whisky is, and a minimum expectation of quality. It's a body that is made up of members of the industry. It's funded by the industry. It's there to look out for the industry as much as the consumer or Scotch or whiskey or the bigger thing, whatever it is what it is. It's not very often that you would have a body looking after a thing, an industry that is funded by that industry, but that's the way it is in Scotch. And a lot of us can spend time being a little bit cynical about that, or overthinking it, or just being a bit negative generally. We have to often think about the positive things that that can achieve as well, and what it has achieved over the years, which are countless. There are many. But unfortunately, what I'm going to talk to you about tonight is one of the things that makes it seem a bit odd, clumsy, extreme, corporate. Not looking after the thing, but looking after certain special interests, especially when they go across borders. To look after those interests, you sometimes feel like there might be some politics and things getting involved. The SWA do a great job. They do a great job, and they have inspired whiskey production all over the world. The quality controls and the things that they've put in place, the definitions, the regulations, everything, you can argue that there are countries all over the world taking inspiration from that those base definitions. But sometimes it does get a wee bit difficult. Here's a product here. Ralphie, years and years ago, when I first started watching Ralphie, I think going from memory, I might be confused, but it feels like it was a long time ago. In fact, did he not? One of his first videos was Glen Breton. This is an empty box. I've got the bottle here. This is a 15-year-old whiskey talking about a very specific story, a famous story. And it brought in a lot of kind of topics into the discussion, because Glen Breton were approached by the Scotch Whisky Association back in around about 2000, 2001, 2002, something like that, because that the name Glen Breton, they felt, was drawing on far too much inspiration from Scotch whisky, to the point that the consumer could be fooled into thinking that a Canadian product was actually a Scotch product. Very protectionist, very blunt, if I'm honest, I think. We're talking about a Glenora distillery. The name of the distillery is Glenora. I think it's not Glen Breton, but it's the island is called Breton, I think. But that's where they took the inspiration from. They say that they live in a glen. It's Glenora Distillery. The brand was Glen Breton. And the SWA said, no, you can't use this branding. This is a 15-year-old product, and Glen Breton is still on the label. This is the Battle of the Glen, and it's actually from this box, and it's here to celebrate. There's a little brochure and things that talks about it a little bit. It's here to celebrate the fact that after 9 years of legal interaction and legal battling, the SWA, quite rightly, was sent back home with a red face, a bloody nose. It went from the local courts to the federal courts, and then it went on to the Canadian Supreme Court. And the Canadian Supreme Court in 2009 wouldn't even hear the case. They threw it out. In the end, Glen Breton or Glenora rather, was given legal costs back in their favour. I don't know if it was to the full amount. Certainly can't cover for all the stress and pain and worry that would have caused to what would otherwise have been a very kind of genuine endeavour, I feel. We're speaking about the region of Nova Scotia, literally New Scotland, and that has been funded by the displacement of Scottish people and the diaspora of Scottish people. So it's inevitable that the local place names, Inverness, you're going to have these names that sound Scottish. We are not in a situation where just an ABC distilling company has just made up a Glen thing just to try and make something compete on the shelf alongside Scotch. This has taken its branding from around where it is and the people that made it and all of that. It's actually what was originally intended to be an homage ended up getting them into a lot of legal trouble. Almost every bottle of Glen Ora whiskey I've seen has a Canadian maple leaf woven somewhere into the design. But it's so extreme now that even this celebratory bottle that's covered in the newspaper clippings and things like that, you can see they've had to go through and redact with red ink pen every mention of the word Scotch, or every mention of any word that could be construed as being alluding to Scotch whisky production. So this is when the letter of a law is in force rather than the spirit of a law. No pun intended. That's just how I feel about this. 2009, as I say, Glen Ora won their case with SWA. Now, this is happening constantly, 100% of the time, all over the world, and real nefarious bad actors and things are shut down and their business practices stopped in order to stop them making, producing and selling things that are not Scotch and things that could harm the reputation of Scotch. We're not going to touch any of that tonight, but the whiskey that's in my glass is something that years later, I think in 2017, 2018, I don't think the legal issues came in until about 2020, 2021, but Macaloni's were told that they could not continue using Macaloni's Caledonian Glenloy Island single malt whiskey. So we've got the Caledonian reference there. We've got Glenloy. We've got the Glen use in practice again. On the west coast of Canada this time, Scotch settlers, in fact, the distillery owner is a Scotsman. He sets up his distillery. It's called, they name it after his name. Caledonian is obviously an homage in my mind. You could argue the use of the word Caledonia as suggesting Scotland in some manner, maybe for people out there that would understand or know such a thing. Glenloy, the use of the word Glen, Island single malt rather than Canadian single malt. I kind of understand. I do kind of understand. It still seems to me from a distance to have more of an Irish vibe. Anyway, this is Canadian whiskey and it's produced at such a small scale that, again, I feel like the pursuit was by the letter and not the spirit. In the end, there was a settlement with this one, and Macaloni's had to remove the Caledonian, but they could call themselves Macaloni's Island Distillery. It's all part of a settlement, negotiation. They continue, and the case is no longer live and valid. But what are the SWA actually doing there? Because for me, it's much more about product and about brand and about the perception of what Scotch whisky is. When actually, what I'm sitting here talking about tonight and what I'm going to be focusing on is something much deeper than that. I'm speaking about the quality. The SWA want to preserve the quality and they'll fight tooth and nail to do that thing. And I think that's the kind of strange thing from me as a whiskey enthusiast geek's perspective. I'm not really interested in the brand. I'm not really interested in the politics. I'm not interested in the geography. But I am very much interested in the flavor and the quality, the integrity. And these are quite different things. And you could argue that the better the whiskey is, the more interest the cynic might decide, the more interest it would gather from the SWA. I don't know what your feelings are on the SWA. Ginger Genius is saying a little late tonight, however, I'm good. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all well. Good to see you, and John, I hope you are keeping well. Per Caldenby is here. I got to spend time at the weekend with Per Caldenby, and what a gentleman and a host he was too. Going to be speaking about a bottle, a souvenir gifted to me by a pal in Germany that Per Caldenby was responsible for. It's nice to have people that actually make these things as barflies in the chat from time to time. We've got Per, occasionally get to welcome in Mark Watt. We get to welcome in Michael Henry and Francis Cuthbert and all of these types of things as well. And I know I'm always very, very grateful how kind and considerate you are when these people are in, and you treat them very much just like fellow barflies. It's amazing. That was an important distinction and a real issue. The spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law is what should be foremost. And this is super interesting, and he's kind of stealing my thunder a wee bit, because Per Caldenby is a lawyer first and foremost. And this distillery that he's built is a passion project. And I went and visited that distillery at the weekend. And while this vPub was scheduled, it wasn't scheduled for this week. I decided that this is the week to talk about this stuff, because how fresh that Nordic visit was for me. Landing in Oslo, having a barflies evening on the Friday night. We got to hang out with Charlie, with Timo, with Pete Blogger. We got to hang out with Eira McFault and Doc. We can't find a rare. We got to hang out with our host for the weekend. It was Rolfie, of course. Stefan Novak, the guy who evangelized Smogen to me. We had just such a really, really nice time. But if you're in Oslo, probably the closest distillery to visit is Smogen, and that's what we did. Thanks, Per. Good to have you in tonight. Gene Kelly, keep me straight, Per, when I start to talk about your product a wee bit later. I'm not going to dwell on it tonight, but Gene Kelly's saying was recently in Ontario, Eastern Canada, and couldn't find Macalonis anywhere. Very small outturn with limited distribution. Lucky you to get one. It's because of the community that you're going to see so many. Maybe out of the bottles I'm going to share with you tonight, 2 of them I think I've purchased. The rest of them are gifted from the community. The Glen Breton I've just held up to camera. 2 Macalonis from Graham Young. There's a Glen Duncan gift in here as well. I think that Smogen might be from Per, but it might be from Stefan. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm not wrong. I'm fairly sure it's from Per. And there are other bottles that I don't think we've got the time to get to, from Brazil, for example, that I think we'll need to keep for another time. Also gifts from the community. Tobias Locke has bought me a dram to say, hi Roy, German distiller Glen Else was not as lucky as Glen Breton. They just did not have the financial resources, and as a small business had to cave in. Now they are named Elseburn. Yeah. I don't know the details of the Glen Else case. I don't know how much the fact it was in Germany would have played into that, everything. I just hope that they have been able to reach a fair settlement in order to continue in a healthy state under the new Elseburn branding. And I hope that actually the publicity maybe have worked for them in a little bit, a bit of a positive spin on things. You never know, sometimes it can be like that. Christoph is saying, my feeling is quality assurance should begin at marking the addition of caramel colouring. Christoph, you're not far away from my feeling exactly. I'm not going to go specifically fall into a discussion of caramel colouring tonight, but let me show you one thing here. All of the Glen Breton legal battles were happening at the same time that this was happening in Scotland. 2 bottles of Cardhu, absolutely identical to your eyes, right? This is the Cardhu controversy right in front of our eyes here. I took this picture from Wikipedia. They have a whole article on this on Wikipedia. On the left-hand side, we have a 12-year-old Speyside Scotch whisky, single malt Scotch whisky from Cardhu, and it says that on the label. On the right-hand side, we have a 12-year-old pure malt Speyside Scotch whisky, Cardhu. They're both from Diageo. The left-hand one became, let's say, it wasn't just about allocation anymore or whatever. It was a very, very popular, very, very high in the rankings, top-selling single malt, and they struggled to keep up with demand. And this was not DCL. This was not UDV. This was Diageo. And in the early 2000s, they swapped out the single malt on the left with what is on the right, a blended malt. They're calling it pure malt on that label. Now, this would eventually lead to redefinitions coming in 2009. But this that you see on the screen in front of you right now is deceptive, because that is not Cardhu that's in that bottle. That is a blended malt of other 12-year-old stocks from other Diageo distilleries in order to keep the demand in the market, to sate the demand in the market. This was happening at the same time. This was happening by a member of the SWA, Diageo. The complaint was not brought in order to rectify that horrendously deceptive thing that I've just explained to you there. A single malt to a blended malt, Cardhu on both. It's completely unacceptable. The complaint was not brought by the SWA. The complaint was brought by producers and consumers. And we wonder why the cynicism can creep in. It's horrendous. Jimmy Legg is saying, was it 2009 when that pure malt was released? It seems like way longer ago. No, I think it was about 20 years ago, Jimmy. In fact, I know it to be 20 years ago or older. I think it was about 2003, 2004, that time, before I was into whiskey. I didn't get into whiskey until 2005, and it wasn't even on my radar as a story originally back then, but I learned about it quite soon after. David is saying SWA is what sets the field for us to geek about. Other drinks could hope for, with all the grey areas and port, rum, etc. Still, when you implement dogma, it sometimes clashes hard in soft places. I love the sentiment. So you're willing to be pragmatic about the role of the SWA, as I am, but you're also mindful that when they go full bulldozer and with their dogmatic approach, as you say, David, these hard clashes in soft places, it's a shame. It is a real shame. And it can severely affect otherwise potentially viable, strong, integrity, best intention businesses, right? Marco is saying, we have the same problem here in Germany with the Slurs malt whiskey, which contains whiskey from other distilleries. So that's maybe a negative thing happening there, Marco. Gene Kelly is saying, let SWA focus on quality of production issues first and foremost. When they show genuine interest in labelling integrity, I'll take them more seriously, Aquaviti. So again, Gene is a wee bit annoyed about the lack of information about additional things like plain caramel colouring E150A, like they're allowed to add that, it's permitted to add that to make Scotch whisky, of course, yeah. We understand, all right, and we understand your reasoning and justifications for it. To not put it on the label is horrendous when you're so focused on what goes on labels. You can't add things to people and not tell them, and not today in 2025, and not for something that's supposed to be traditional and natural. Anyone who's surprised when money buys favours really surprises me, says Jimmy Legg. I don't know anything about the money involved behind the scenes. Best to stay out of that. But the Cardhu debacle, says Ben, almost split the SWA. Diageo had to cave in to the other big players. It's just horrendous. Tim Pearls is saying, evening all, apologies for being late. It's the big boy in the room. It's right. It's the bullying. And by the way, Tim, never worry about being late to the vPub, my friend. It's just nice to welcome you here. Anyway, I'm going to get something else in the glass. I'm going to move on to the next thing. And I think since Per's in, and I don't know how, he's an hour ahead of us, I don't know how long he can stay, I'll raise a glass to the Graham and say thank you for keeping my Canadian whiskey stocks so in such rude health. Cheers, Graham Young. The reason I brought this topic forward, we're all a big fan of Francis Cuthbert, of the man, of the character, but also the story that brought us Daftmill. He's a farmer and he's growing grain and he likes whiskey, and he gets to the point where he's like, how hard can it be? Let's build a distillery. It turned out to be much harder than he expected. He did it on a very, very small scale, and he built anticipation over a long, long, long time before he finally released his malt whiskey at 12 years old, and it's become one of the most sought after Scotch whisky brands that's in existence. Daftmill it's available now, especially the core range stuff, the 46% ABV stuff you can pick up on the shelf. But it's loved and loved and loved. And he is still a farmer. He is making whiskey part-time. It's a part-time thing. Now, famously, he only does it twice a year or through 2 seasons. He's got a winter season and a summer season, and he makes a very, very limited amount of stock. We can understand all of these concepts. But then I didn't pick up my Smogen bottle down there. I've got a wee drop of the Dante left. But I've got a bottle of this here. Doesn't say Smogen on the label. This says Ashkine. 57.7% this particular batch. 8 years old, you can see on there, Golden Promise is the thing that would get the ears to prick up of most whiskey geeks, right? Golden Promise barley. This is from Smogen, and the reason that it's got a different branding is it's not the same spirit that's normally made at Smogen. But let me tell you a little bit about this tiny distillery. Per is not a farmer, he's a lawyer, and yet he travels he lives far, far south of the distillery. He travels up to the distillery every single week and stays there in order to produce as much whiskey as he can. Now, he's got a reasonably sized but small by any stretch of the imagination mash tun that he has to rouse and mix manually. There's no rakes or anything in this mash tun. This is very, very hard labor, so he has to rake that. And it goes into his fermentation vessels that are on site. Again, these are big vessels, but compared to any other washback that you've ever seen in your life, they're tiny. And then he's got these two quite distinctive, almost black copper stills, but they are fat and meaty looking things. The spirit still has a reflux bulb on there. It looks a little bit more elegant and slender, but the wash still is one of these big fat stills in the style of Lag or Balblair and places like that. After all the process is said and done, and after he's gone through all of the distillation, he's maybe got somewhere in the order of, Per will correct me, somewhere in the order of 500 litres in that spirit still. But after distillation, after all of that process, he fills half a cask. Half a cask for all of that. That's the maximum he can do in one day. So when we talk about scale and we talk about these projects, a little bit like Francis, I don't know how Francis and Per would both either of them feel me comparing them. It seems a wee bit of a crowbar involved here, but there is some similarity in my mind at least. This is born out of passion. These are born out of, I like whiskey. I would like to be able to make my own whiskey. And while I'm doing it, I would like to try and make it as good as it can be. Francis tried his hardest to make a very, very pure lowland style of whiskey in Daft Mill. I think he achieved that and some. Per in Sweden went out there to make the most distinctive, characterful, dense, old school, traditional whiskey he could possibly make. And I feel like he's very proud of where he is in Sweden, his location and everything, and he celebrates that in every bottle that appears. But I feel also strongly when he speaks about his love for whiskey generally, that it comes from an appreciation of Scotch whiskey. The character that he's ended up with is absolutely distinctively his, and it's Smogen. But it's been produced out of falling in love with Scotch. Let's have a wee nose. I feel self-conscious since Per's in tonight, but hopefully we're comfortable in each other's company by now. Per's been on the vPub at least twice in the past for various topics, and he's regularly in the chat. Smogen gets around 125 litres of new make, 70% ABV from each run. So when I say half a cask, 125 litres, right? That's maybe just a wee bit more than half. And I would suggest the Ashkine that's in the glass tonight with Golden Promise, the yield will be even lower again. Cheers, everyone. Cheers. Lovely bright fruit on this. Lovely yellow fruit, sweet fruit. Light honey. I don't think this is smoky, but there's a savoury edge to this too. Creamy malt. Butteriness. Cheers. The impact is texture immediately. And listen, there's a lot of whiskies out there just now that have got this lovely gloopy thick texture. It's not something that's difficult to find in whiskey these days, that thick textures, because people have worked out in recent years and decades how much they love it. And with a rise in enjoyment of cask strength whiskey specifically, I think as well, we all got this it's lovely flavour. We all got to fall in love with this texture side of whiskey that we hadn't really appreciated as just casual whiskey drinkers in the past. But oiliness, waxiness, butteriness, gloopiness, however you want to describe it, as that arrives, it's there. But it's also a wee bit different because there's a lovely sweet spice aspect, a florality and a top note detail along with that creamy malt. Buttery even. I know from experience that this does well with a wee bit of water in it. I'm going to take another wee neat sip as well. I enjoyed that. Something to chew. Oh. You know, it's cask strength. This is potent whiskey. But I also think it hides, maybe it's the texture, maybe it's that barley. I think it hides its ABV very well. 57, wasn't it? $57.7, yeah. Wee bit of water in it with a water dropper just to see if it opens things up anymore. Exaggerates the fruit. Ripeness, so I've just burst open the fruit. I'm getting a fleshier, sweeter, more kind of fragrant edge to the fruit. Do you know what this constantly reminds me of? And it's just happened again. I'm not even, my mind isn't in that space, but just putting that wee bit of water in takes me there. And it's the density that you can really enjoy unlocking from something like a Springbank or some older expressions, especially from bourbon cask. I know that Ben Nevis is really popular in sherry cask, but if you can get an old Ben Nevis from a bourbon cask, decent vintage on it as well, can be a real density to that liquid too, and it just feels a little bit like you're cracking the thing open. I feel somewhat confident in my naivety tonight to sit here and say that if this was poured blind for me, I think there's enough character here, really acidic spike at the end, a sour acidic hit at the finish there. I think I could pick this out as Smogen. Certainly pick it out, maybe even go as far to say Ashkime specifically from Smogen. I find the character so compelling. I find it so kind of so in line with, it's almost born of the passion of the goal, the North Star that he had when he set up that distillery. This was going to be what came out at the end. I don't know if it was exactly aligned with what he imagined, but the way he's gone about his business, the scale, the operation, the dedication, I think it's fascinating. Anytime there's been a Smogen released in the UK, it's just evaporated. The only ones I'm aware of is independent bottlers. Most recently, there were 2 from Decadent Drinks. I find it frustrating that such a high-quality spirit exists out there, and we can't get a hold of it everywhere that we are. We have to rely on the Mule Network or us traveling or something to pick up some stuff. I think that we need to take steps to do something about that. However, we also have to remember how precious this liquid is. If he fills half a barrel in a day, or just over half a barrel, you can understand there's not a lot of it going around. I would have to say that Smogen has been a positive product of somebody making, and I use this very clumsy statement that I may offend Per as I say it, a Scotch-alike. They've become a member of Planet Scotch through making Swedish single malt whiskey, but born out of a love of Scotch whiskey. Per, if I've offended you, I know that we won't be seeing your name popping up in the comments, but I'm very glad that you're here, and I'm very glad that you're making the style of whiskey that you are, because I cannot think of a single distillery that is making anything like it that I have touched. A grain of malt, James is in. Good to see you, James. He's saying, Smogen, so gloopy indeed, aquavite. Did you pick up the new batch of Ashkeim then? I did not. I did pick one bottle up. You'll see it over my shoulder here. It's a 700ml bottle, which is rare for Smogen. This, I think it was sold to us from Pear's personal stock, maybe, or let's say his less distributed stock. That's the one I brought home. I fell in love with it. I think it was the second dram I had when I visited there. I couldn't believe it was available. Arnie's saying world whisky is not bound by the same rules as Scotch whisky, such as what type of wood that can be used. More world distilleries should explore the possibility of more flavours. They are actually doing that, Arnie. There's a lot of distilleries out there that are not bound by it. But because of the abundance of oak and coopered oak and coopering of oak that's out there, not just for Scotch, but of course famously for bourbon, European oak right across the European continent. If you go down to the southern hemisphere, wine maturation, things like that, oak is just so prevalent that while different woods can be experimental and risky at times, really quite risky, I think it can also be difficult to track it down, and you end up having to go and for special coopering contracts, and it really adds a lot of cost when things are already tough. So when it's a gamble, I can understand why most stick with oak. Anthony Lambert is saying, good evening, folks. Just got in from work. Being a Welshman, living in Germany, I've tried whiskies from both countries. Haven't been blown away by German whiskey. Love lots of Penderyn, though, or Penderyn. Penderyn or Penderyn. Sometimes I get corrected. You'll have to excuse me, Anthony. How would you pronounce it? I get you. I would suggest that Germany, not all of the German spirits I've enjoyed, some of them feel they have a very, very distinctive vibe. And I think it was explained to me that they can take on that character because a lot of the German distilleries are producing malt whiskey in the style of, or maybe similar to how they might produce a fruit-based spirit. Don't know how much truth there is in that. Master Chief's Sea Chest, that's Mark. How you doing, buddy? Sorry I was late joining in. Had to make Alex dinner. Sirloin steak with basil pesto, tomato and herbs de Provence. You cannot make us hungry at this time of the night. Still a lot of the vPub to go before anybody gets a snack. Come on, Mark. It's nice to welcome you in here. Hope you had a nice dinner. I do not easily get offended, and I did not this time either, says Per. Well, I was trying to be careful, but get my point across, buddy. Thank you for your understanding. Correct any mistakes that I've made as well, please. Donner Pass Whiskey is saying, oh yes, did Ben Nevis and Refill Bourbon is true magic. We'll be travelling to the Oswas during the Oswas, to Tahoe, but we'll be watching the replay with magic drams. Thank you very, very much, Tim. Safe, happy travels. And that'll be nice if you're able to check in during the Oswas on Saturday. Christoph is saying, just travelled to Denmark. Will Stauning be in the mix tonight, I wonder? Actually, no, not tonight. I've got a Stauning down there. But I have to say I picked wrong. The Stauning I picked isn't. I've tried better Staunings, and the one that I have is not their best, let's say. So until I get a good one, maybe. Durrell Dram, who's also a German, living in Scotland. The Ashkeim 8 mulled over by Amazing James is one of my most prized whiskey possessions. Very difficult to eke out. I feel the same. I feel like it's one of those whiskies that you keep tucked away. You have to put other things, as Vinnet No Nonsense Whiskey would call it, a guard whiskey in front of it, because you know that if it's at the front and you hit it, 50cl bottle as well, it's gone. That said, the 50cl bottle, because it's so concentrated. Inverurie Whiskey Shop, Mike, good to see you. He's saying, Aquavidi, we had a tasting of Adelphi releases around a year ago, and your Smogen more than held its own against a plethora of 20. He's talking to Per as well, against a plethora of 20-year plus whiskies. Excellent stuff. I would love to witness people enjoying a blind lineup where a Smogen was in the lineup. Falscraft is saying, talking about wood, I had a few years ago, pine and needlewoods would be bitter. Now, there seem to be needlewood casks producing sweet whiskies. I find all this amazing, as do I-Class. I really do. Christoph is saying, in my experience, I am German. German grain is better than German malt. That's interesting in itself, maybe to do with the rectification, maybe to do with the stills and the distillation. I know that a lot of the German distilleries are not producing from a traditional onion-shaped pot still or whatever. Alberto's in Italy. Road to Dram, he's saying, talking about German distillery, St. Killian's Ultra Peated release was one of the memorable drams from Whisky Live in Paris. St. Killian's is now at an age that they have knocked the corners off. They've refined what they're doing. They're getting better and better and better. Now that we're seeing some aged and mature product coming out from all of these types of distilleries, I think we're able to speak about them through a different lens. We are able to not hold Scotch up and judge the new whiskey against the Scotch. The new whiskey is getting good enough that we hold it up and judge the Scotch against the new whiskey, especially when it comes to flavour, integrity, intent, price, value, and availability. A lot of the brands that I might mention to you tonight, you would think, oh, I just don't see that. Depending on where you are and what market you're in, a wee search online, you might find that it's already been distributed where you are. Let's move on to another distillery that I have had nothing from, nothing whatsoever. When I was gifted this, I did a wee bit of research on this distillery. I've since done more research on it on the run up to this vPub tonight, and it's kind of assuaged my original research a little bit. But when I did the original research of this, couldn't wait to get it open because I thought, that's Scotch. That's as far away from Scotland as you can possibly make whiskey without being on the moon, and yet they're making Scotch. And the language on the website was very clear where they were taking their inspiration from. It was very clear where their passions were ignited. They didn't write it in any sentence or any words, but the vibe, the style of whiskey that they wanted to make, what they were going after, made me feel like their full intent from day one was to make a Scotch-alike. Anyway, I was reading their website today, and I think maybe it's been updated a wee bit, and it doesn't kind of leave the same impact as it did. But I'm going down to Tasmania. I'm going all the way down to the island just off the south coast of Australia, where they've got 1 billion distilleries now. I don't know how many there actually are. I think it's in excess of 40 or something on a fairly small scale island. But this is actually Wobbs Harbour. This is a coastal distillery, and this is their Founders Reserve, very high ABV. It's 62% ABV. It just so happens that this particular one that I have is a port cask maturation, our highest quality tawny port casks at cask strength. And anyone that knows what to look out for with a port whiskey, they see this kind of lovely, rich, dark colour, but they also see these kind of bright, reddish, almost kind of burnished copper, sometimes pink and magenta highlights. Usually gives away red wine, certainly gives away tawny port for me. Pop the tube off to the side. This is, it's not opened, you can see I'm just opening this tonight. This was a gift from Super Barfly Glenn Duncan. Now he's obviously down in the opposite end of the world, so he doesn't tend to tune into the vPub live, but hopefully, Glenn, you're here, and I know it's taken me a long time to get to this. A year, 2 years? This is a 2023 release. It could be 2 years. Even in the glass. It's a gorgeous colour here. Really deep red. Inviting colour. I know I prefer paler whiskies, but you know, I still get a kick out of enjoying when the colour of the whiskey is natural, we can enjoy all colours of whiskey. When we're suspicious that it's not, when it's to a specification or through deceit or lots of excuses where they've added colour, then we can't enjoy it. The enjoyment of the colour is removed from us. This is quite dry on the nose immediately, and I think it's a wee bit tight. This is a neck pour. I have to caveat all of these tastings under these conditions. This is just a reaction to the first pour. At 62%, I was expecting much more of an explosion in there. Dry fruit, damsons, cranberries. Obviously, it's port casks, so you're looking for those red fruits. Sometimes you get a sweeter lick. It's quite dry. Some sweet boiled confectionaries, like boiled fruit, sweets, that type of thing, like jam. I'm looking for it. I have to be honest, but it's salty. So you've got this ripe, dry, hinting at sweet fruit with a sharpness right through it. And then you've got this crispness. It's like fresh air. And when you pick up on that outdoor air, that crisp air, it brings a kind of cool element into things that can take you down the road of mint and menthol and things. But now, today, as I nose this, thinking that they advertise this as coastal whiskey. If you ever see pictures of this distillery, it's probably the most coastal distillery you'll ever see. It's almost perched over the top of the waves. It's so close to the sea. I'm looking for it. I think it's a converted oyster hatchery. I'm not getting much minerals in this. So if you're thinking oyster hatchery and things like that, if you're going to go full kind of environmental kind of provenance of where the Situation Distillery is, I'm not getting a kind of seashelly mineralic side a wee bit, but not much. Just kind of power of suggestion maybe. But I think the cask is the main voice here, the main character. Now, anybody that knows me and has been watching the vPub for long enough, my kryptonite is red wine. Not far behind red wine is port cask for me. My hit rate of enjoyment of port casks probably sits at 20%. I'm just guessing, but and even if I enjoy a port cask, it tends not to be a re-pour. Anyway, let's see how this one goes at 62%. Wow. Okay. Not like nothing I expected. You can tell how much I'm enjoying something when the roll of things that goes through my head, the mental picture that I see, is not all the flavors and things. It's just a bang, a big explosion of flavor. It's high ABV, very port cask forward, but all the flavors I'm getting is good. It's not the negative stuff. The role that I'm seeing scrolling through my head is the people I want to share this with, the people that I want to put it in front of them and say, try this. I was expecting a good endeavour of malt whiskey put in a fresh port cask, high ABV, 50cl bottle, and I know it's not going to be cheap to come by because these distilleries are tiny and they're producing in a fairly challenging place when it comes to taxes and costs and infrastructure and things. In Australia, we know that they're expensive. However, somebody's making good whiskey here. There's nothing challenging or off. Flavour and density. It's like Smogen, and it's a different take. This is like this feels like one of those whiskies, and I don't know what the climate is. Wobbs Harbour is on the east of Tasmania. I think it's maybe one of the most eastern. So I think it's a kind of temperate climate, a little bit like Scotland. I think it's wet. But the age, I don't know if there's an age on this. I was expecting raw, I was expecting challenging, but we've got refinement here as well. It's like berry infused maple syrup and salt, concentrated fruit, syrups, pucker dry on the finish. Wow. I can't believe I'm this energized over a port cask whiskey. Let's read some of this. Tasmanian Maritime Single Malt Whisky, ocean-cooled distillery, made and matured at Wobbs Harbour, Biceno. Sorry about the pronunciation. Set on the rocks of Biceno sits our repurposed oyster hatchery, a cooling system run entirely by the ocean, and 5 salt-laden bond stores, maturing whisky by the sea. There's certainly a cool outdoor, and there's certainly a saltiness to it. I am fairly confident that this is not going to be available in any. I'm not going to go into a browser or whatever to see if this is available, but my goodness. Glenn, I hope you kept some of this for yourself. I'm only just now realizing I haven't put any water in it. I'm 3 sips in. See how it gets on with a wee bit of water. Jam. I don't think it's the water that's brought it out. I think it was probably there, but it just didn't occur to me until now. A nice, moist tobacco, a fresh tobacco. Still in the tin or the pack. But there's just the red fruit. Where I first blasted it was kind of dry red fruit, the damson cranberry thing. It's gone a little bit more berry type, a little sweeter. I've had a couple of comments from patrons, from barflies, from people chatting recently, talking about how they can get Tasmanian whiskey to me and that I should be trying some Tasmanian whiskies. Look, I've had larks in the past and the Sullivan's Coves, and I've had these experiences with mixed experiences for everything that's been really quite good and tasty. I've had a few that are quite, is Hellier's Road Tasmanian, remind me. I can't remember if it's Australian or somebody will remind me now. Second guessing myself here. But some of them have been a little bit short on experience in my personal experience I'm talking about. But some of them have been cracking, but the cracking stuff just doesn't seem to get here, in my opinion. Glenn Duncan is here. Glenn, I'm so glad that you're in tonight, and you had no idea I was going to be opening that, but buddy, you've given me a cracking bottle of whiskey. Just got into work. Only sounds like you're trying a Wobbs Harbour port cask. Hope you're enjoying. I am more than enjoying. Timothy H is saying, slept my day off, catching up at 1.5 speed. I actually had a delicious Aussie dram from King Lake Distillery just last night, aged partially in ex-Lefroy casks. And absolutely delicious. Good for you, Timothy. There was another chat there from Glenn Duncan, if I can get it. It's 4 years old. And east coast of Tasmania get very little rain. Okay, berry-infused maple syrup is an insult to Canadians. You don't want to know what I do with your maple syrup, Jimmy, but I'm running out of it, buddy. So you need to get over here and bring me some. Falsgraf is saying, could you repeat the name of the Tasmanian beauty, please? Falsgraf, it's Wobbs Harbour. And this is their Founders Reserve 62% port cask strength, Wobbs Harbour. It happens regularly for me on a vPub to open a bottle and be really pleased with it and really chuffed. And it's nice when I can share that with you. I need you to understand, especially when it's come from a friend or gifted from the community, barflies and things like that. Hopefully that puts me in a position that for me to say that I'm not really, it's all right, or be a wee bit negative about it. I have to just try and be honest. I'm not going to destroy the friendship over it. I feel confident that we can all be trusted enough. And it's often the case that maybe I'm gifted something that the person gifted me hasn't even tried it themselves anyway. So I'm just going to go at it as honestly as I can. And this one, it's been a while since I remember, this is a fresh crack. The Smogen that I had earlier tonight, I'm very familiar with. And I had expectations, and this challenged those expectations. It knocked me on my backside, genuinely. I wonder how long this is going to last. It's an absolute cracker. 4 years old. Kyle Taylor is saying we need to get Aquaviti some of the Virginia Distilling Company's port cask blend of their ASM purchased at auction. Peated single malt. Nancy Fraley, the famous Nancy Fraley, created the product, and it's amazing. It's nice when it happens, right? When it's passionate whiskey folk that know their whiskey that's making the whiskey, it can help. Agrina Malt is saying, Helios Road is from Tassie. Yes, Aquaviti. Thank you, James, Australian James, living in Sweden, of course. Donnerpass Whiskies bought me a dram to say 2008 Deanston 9-year cask strength Bordeaux red wine is the pinnacle of that cask for me. I remember you took one of this to the Seconds Bastards ball and it was loved. I didn't take it there. I have never really got on with red wine casks, and I remember back around about the time of the Deanston, Long Row was really the thing that I was teaching myself to enjoy red wine cask whiskey with. But that Deanston came along around about that time, and I absolutely adored it. That was full maturation, I think, the original one, the cask strength one. But I went to the Bastards Ball in Texas, and I was gifted a bottle there, and the couple that gifted me it were not offended at all that I couldn't take it back home, and asked them if they would be comfortable with me opening it and sharing it there and then, and that's what we did, and that got rinsed at that event. And you're absolutely right, Tim. It went down a treat. Glenn Duncan has not only gifted me this bottle that's knocked me on my backside tonight, but he's bought me a dram as well. I hope that means that he's not offended by the fact I'm judging his gift live on air. Thank you very much, Glenn. You're a superstar. Cheers to you and yours. Hope Sharon's doing well. As a non-Aussie, but I can get some Aussie whiskey. Spring Bay and Morris. Cape Byron is good too. Let's put a wee plug out there for Phil, it's in my watch list, Phil. I haven't watched it yet. And there might be a quiz question to do with this. So I can't say what distillery. Phil's just dropped a perfect video on this theme has dropped from First Fill Whiskey this week. Phil, I bet you it's a belter. I always catch your content when you put it out, my friend. Keep bringing it. Excellent, high quality stuff. And very, very inclusive and easy to understand concepts. We're lucky to have First Fill making whiskey content out there. Your net contribution to Whiskey Buddy will be huge. Well, I thank you for it personally. All right. Brilliant. Really chuffed. Beyond excited about that. Like I say, I'm going to try and keep the vPub neat tonight, but I do have another 2 whiskies to share with you. I've also got a couple of things to mention, housekeeping-wise. The Diageo video, vPub that I had a few weeks ago, we put up the rumoured prices for the special releases that came out, and wouldn't you know it, those special releases, terrifying as they were, turned out to be correct, but they were in US dollars. I spent the entire vPub quoting them, not the entire vPub. The time that we talked about that segment and slide, I was quoting them as in pounds. That's how it was quoted to me. But I did caveat it with saying it was to be confirmed and it was rumoured. I said that the source was on Reddit, I think, even, and we weren't sure. The prices were correct, but it was the US dollar prices that came up. So the net result of that is that it's probably somewhere in the order of about a third more expensive. The prices I suggested were a third more expensive than they actually are. They've landed this week, and they're a bit cheaper. But that said, I mean, the Clynelish is an 18-year-old. It looks super attractive to me, 170 quid. I mean, I think I'd have been all over that at 125, 130, 140, even at a push, a stretch or whatever, but it's just still too salty, still too expensive. I appreciate that they're far too long in the development to catch up with any kind of recent changes. I don't know what the story is, but the Diageo special releases, I feel like the good stuff is going to get snapped up and sell quite well, but if we wait around for long enough, we're going to eventually be able to pick them up and discount. Diageo are teaching us that behaviour pattern now. Whereas if they got the prices right at the front end, everybody would be shouting positively from every direction. Why is it so hard? Eric has bought me another dram. Cheers, buddy. How you keeping? He's saying I've been so focused on Scotch the last 2 years that I have to drink bourbon or something else once in a while to keep enjoying Scotch. That's an interesting point. It seems over familiarity can reduce appreciation. What do you think? I had this discussion on Tuesday night. Nissim and his pal Yuri it was Glasgow Whisky Club. We had a lovely flight of whiskies. I went up and I had a dram with them and we're chatting about this. And they're in a cul-de-sac of only sipping high-end. They're chasing these closed distilleries and high-age statements and classics and all of these things. And asked them, what contemporary whiskies are you tasting? What contrast are you putting in place to make you realize and appreciate all these really super legendary, subtle, delicate, old school style drams? And we ended up in this really quite interesting discussion of, yeah, Eric, we need to occasionally have a wee step change, take a break, sip something different, maybe even not just a different category of whiskey, but a different spirit altogether. You come back to Scotch again. It happened to me this summer. I took a huge break from Scotch. I'm not saying I didn't have any, but I wasn't in the Scotch bubble over the summer break. When I came back after summer, I had to attenuate my enthusiasm because everything I was picking up was like, wow, is this amazing? It's so long since I've tasted this. And being back home again, being able to just sit with and appreciate and contemplate was fabulous. Eric, thanks for your dram, buddy. Thank you very much. Cheers to you. Eric is still out there doing educational, super whiskey content on YouTube to this day, buddy. I think you're still active, aren't you, my friend? I need to catch up with Eric Waite Whiskey Studies and see what you're chatting about this weather, my friend. It's been a wee while, eh? Right, the other thing to talk about housekeeping-wise, there's a lock-in coming on Sunday night, and it's going to be an opportunity. There's so much I need to share with patrons, so much happening behind the scenes, so much. It's really tough, so many spinning plates, but it'll give me a chance to sit with you on Sunday night and go through everything and get you up to speed with things that's happening behind the scenes and arrangements and stuff like that. But if you're coming to Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend, if you need transport from the festival to the dinner, if you're joining us for that dinner, it's a rolled in package. You pay for a meal, your first drink, the bus transfer as well, with everybody getting it together. You need to speak to Craig, who arranges that every year for us. He's on Facebook as part of the Barflies group. So jump onto Facebook, Aquavitae Barflies. Craig Dollier is on there, and you'll find the details. You'll be able to sign up and pay in advance in order to have you just turn up, and then you're not worried about what you're eating that night. You're not worried about transport or logistics or whatever. You just get on the bus and hang out with us and toddle off home at the appropriate time that suits you. If you don't have access to Facebook and you're not part of the Aquavitae Barflies on Facebook, message me directly on Patreon. Send an email to whisky@aquavitae.com, or you can reach out through Instagram or whatever it may be, direct messages. Although it can take me a long time to get back to a lot of these messages. There's still time for you to get your name down for a seat, but once the bus is full, it's full. And there's nothing I can do about that. And when you come along to ticket tastings or whatever it is, these things are not elastic. So please, I'm trying to give you as much time as I can. The bus is there, it's arranged, get your name down for it. All right, I think that's enough. Let's get on to the whiskies that I have purchased myself out of curiosity, it's about time I connected or reconnected with these whiskies. And for one of them, it's good timing because of a relaunch, if you like. Now that they're of a certain age, they've relaunched and redefined themselves. And another one, I think I'm just a wee bit delinquent in getting round to, I've tried special releases from this distillery, but I've not tried their core range. So I've just gone for their pure entry-level core range on both counts. One of them is Irish. The other one is a very close neighbour, English. So you can decide what I go for first, Irish or English. Whiskey Loving Kelpie is in. Good to see you. How you keeping? Glennis Maid is in saying, it's wee well since I've welcomed you, buddy. He's saying, I find the solution is to take a break from alcohol altogether. I need at least 3 to 4 weeks break from all drink every few months. I don't drink that much, but I need to step back once in a while. Do you know what's cool about that comment? Is that it's not dogma. You're not saying everybody should do that, because what I find is that everybody can find and discover their own cadence, their own preferences, and their own way. When I found that when I took a significant break, 3 or 4 weeks as an example, dry months, that type of concept, I found that because I was achieving that, when I was coming back into alcohol again, I was just a bit overconfident with myself. And I was probably arguably forgetting balance and hitting it a bit too hard. And I don't think I'm typical. I don't think everybody is like that. I think most people have a less kind of scattergun on the spectrum, ADHD kind of brain. They have a different mindset, different preferences, a different way of viewing these things. For me, it has to be everything is mindful all of the time. And when I start to do the kind of digital on and off, that worked a bit less for me. I know I'm not, maybe it's not that I'm atypical, but I'm not typical. I think people benefit hugely from putting in significant dry breaks. And it's not just about alcohol and a relationship with alcohol. It's a relationship, why we're there in the first place. If it can enhance our experience after we come back, it's very, very much worth it. And Kelpie, Whiskey Loving Kelpie saying, Olaf from Lisbon. Are you there permanently in Lisbon, or are you there on a break? You're not part of the Lisbon crowd, are you? Seb, David and Bruno and all of those guys that are down there. Pedro from Brazil, who I think's over in Europe right now, evening barflies, a bit late, but glad to join in. It's nice to have you, Pedro. I hope I'm getting to see you this weekend. I will be quite late because it's the Oswaz this weekend, but hopefully I'll get to see you afterwards. Jimmy Legacy, Nora, you're not typical. You're right, Jimmy. Happy to spend my birthday evening tonight in Edinburgh Aquavitae. I didn't see anybody choosing between Irish or English. Oh, getting a lot of people suggesting English. It's maybe because, okay, we've got Debangsu and Debangsu, got an Irish vote in there. What came up first? What came up first? Oh, I think you were the first by looking at it. Alan Smith is saying Craig's a star for arranging the bus. Thank you, Alan. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort on the boy. And it's more expensive this year. The restaurant's up, the bus price is up. It's frustrating, but it just makes it so easy. And I pay it in advance so that by the time you turn up, it's all done. Pedro, sorry, I caught that, Pedro, just as it jumps again. Arnie said my experience is still very much limited to Scotch, apart from a bottle of Circumstance, which every time makes me go, holy whack-a-mole. I feel different perspectives can be amazing. Circumstance is it doesn't feature tonight, Arnie. It's not the English distillery in the offing tonight. I've talked about Circumstance before. I think it's fabulous stuff. Great prices too. Yep, with those guys too. Yes, Lisbon born and raised. Fantastic. So the Lisbon crowd grows, at least in my mind, it's growing. Andy is here, pouring an English sherry bomb next. Lake's Quatrefoil Hope, fabulous dram aquavitae, bit of a different beast to my opening Springbank 5-year-old. So you're switching through the gears, buddy. Good for you, my friend. Falsgraf is saying, for me, it's mixed. I need more than one evening to come back after a break. But on the third or fourth night, experiences are enhanced. It's different for everybody. We just need to find their own spot. Auderty is saying Irish, Irish, Irish. I have to say, I think the first one to come in, the wee, I got the clover one, so it's Irish. Okay, this distillery, I have never bought a bottle from this distillery that I've not enjoyed. Even their early stuff I enjoyed. But even from the early stuff, I had a suspicion that there were some kind of Scotch vibes to this, and it's rude because it's an Irish distillery. It's utterly an Irish distillery. They're making single pot still. They've got 3 stills. The malt whiskey that they're making is triple distilled. This is Irish, but the robustness, the depth, the flavor stage of this whiskey from all the batches I've tried told me that there was something a bit different here, something a bit more rugged, something a bit more coastal, something a bit more fermentation focused, bread and dough and cookies and that type of thing. I'm talking about Dingle. This, as you can see from the label, is their single malt expression. So they've got a new core range out now. The Dramface recently reviewed the 10-year-old, and that went down very, very well. The writer was very impressed with the 10-year-old. But on reading that review, I spotted there was a single pot. You know how much I love single pot still as a whiskey style. Again, it's so much to do with texture. I went out and I picked up a bottle. I knew immediately that I would want to try and see how Dingle is potentially evolved and evolving. It's down on the west coast of Ireland, obviously. The chap that was once in charge of making this whiskey, Graham Cool, very cool character, was here on the vPub when I had one of the most almighty technical challenges I've ever had. And it ended up being great fun. I wasn't a part of it in the end. I get kicked out with no Wi-Fi, but it can happen from time to time. This is not the 10-year-old. This is their core release product. This is 46.3% ABV. Non-age statement. A little bit of research and digging around on the web suggests that this is between 6 and 8 years old. But look, it says non-chill filtered, no added colour on the side. And this is a vatting. This is kind of matured in a mixture of sherry and bourbon casks. Now, so we can look at all of those specs, consider what the whiskey is, and we can make a kind of mental image to build up an expectation of what this might taste like. I am going to add a layer on top of that because every Dingle I have ever tasted has surprised me with its fermentation forward fruit and bread notes. I'm just going to cover this up with a wee coin, just give it a spin, see if we get a blast of that from on the nose. Absolutely. Moist sponge cake, bread, cookie dough, those types. Banana bread even, wow. Ripe banana bread. Anybody tried Peter Lee's banana bread? Malty, creamy. So it's got that, it's that smash together of fruit, orchard fruit, bright fruit, and a creamy maltiness, and then at the core and in the center. And I'm trying to give you shapes with my hands here just to try and articulate what my brain is sensing. But at the core, we've got this kind of this baking, bakery, patisserie, sweet patisserie, Danish pastry, apple pastries. The apple pastries is perfect. So that, and then that leads you into looking for kind of other elements. So you're looking for kind of things and a wee bit of cinnamon spice. I'm going to suggest that's from a wood spice element here, oak. Soft, approachable, inviting. Nothing obvious on the wood. It's intended to be such. So you've got bourbon cask here, and then a little bit of kind of rounding and sweetening and depth, probably added from some sherry cask. But this is their non-age statement version. This is a slightly younger one from their 10-year-old. So let's see how this sips. All the Dingles I've had have sipped much higher than the age. Cheers. This is the danger. When I talked at the start of the show about we don't hold up Scotch to judge these new distilleries, these newer distilleries, wherever they are in the world. We're now holding up these new distilleries to judge Scotch. Let me tell you why. I don't remember what I paid for this, but it was in the order of 50 quid. So think of where we are in that realm. That's right in the retailer sweet spot of best price. So if you get a good quality whiskey that they find easy to sell and resell again, easy to recommend, happy customers, not spending too much, and they get their head around something like this. And it's got enough density, it's got enough of a flavour hook, enough impact from first approach that even if they only give them a wee half a CL sip as a try before you buy, they know they can hook people. This is what Scotch needs to be doing more of. The depth, the weight, the body, the robustness. There's got to be some long fermentations in here. I was doing some research for 72 hours, they said, but I guarantee you 72 hours, it's usually got a mix of a long fermentation over the weekends or something like that, at the very least. But I would suggest that it's often an average and there's some longer fermentations in here. A little bit acidic on the end, quite a short finish, a little bit of bitterness in there. We've got some oak in the finish there. I would say that that is a wee bit of a kind of negative on this. The arrival and development and the fruit and everything is much better in the finish, but it is drying, so it does make you want to go back in for a wee bit more. So let's try again. So I'm not going to go and judge this against other Scotch whiskies. Non-age statement, entry-level stuff, up to and around £50, £55, £60. I don't know what the retail is intended for this. I'm going to judge other Scotch whiskies in that price point against this. I think we don't have anything in this bottle, in this glass right now, neck pour, caveat of course, that is going to wipe the floor with all of those Scotch whiskies at that price point. But what we do have something that's actually really quite distinctive. This is Irish whiskey, but it's made in, it's not made in the Scotch style. It's not. But it's made from 100% barley. Okay, it's not going to be whiskey until it's 3 years old, and it's going to be matured in oak. This is different because they will triple distill, but that's not a definition of Scotch whiskey. You can distill twice, you can distill 3 times, that is not defined in the Scotch whiskey regulations. We can triple distill, and we often do, as you know, Hazelburn and Auchentoshan and Benromac and Glasgow and blah, 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 lots more. This just so happens to be triple distilled. They've got a 3-still setup at Dingle. This is just bringing something different to that lineup. I'm not sure you would be guaranteed of somebody picking this out as their favourite in a lineup of 4, 5, half a dozen blind whiskies, but they would absolutely pick it out as being characterful and flavourful. Applesauce, sweet apples. I'm back in that realm, haven't I? I was talking about that with the pastry stuff. I'd love this. I think I need to try the 10-year-old. I would love to try it in pure ex-bourbon. Do you know that? I understand the mass market temptation to take maybe a 70-30, a 80-20 ratio of bourbon versus sherry casks. I really do. But when you're trying to stand out, when everybody's doing that and it becomes generic, the wood element of it, the maturation side becomes generic, it's maybe not displaying your spirit in the best way. I love a bourbon cask release and a sherry cask release, and that's easier for a consumer to understand as well, and for the flavors to hook them in. But this is a good whiskey. 50 quid, core range, something that didn't even exist before. Peter Lee saying, did I miss something there? Oh, we must have heard the sparrows have fed back to him that I mentioned his banana loaf. I found a tasting note in a whiskey buddy, and I was able to reach back in the memory banks and take it from a speciality that you're famous for. Jimmy Legg is saying, thanks, Peter. Andy, if I can get the Deanston 12 for less than Dingle, I'm afraid the Dingle is going to get a Miss Aquavitae. You know, I'm glad you're here, Jimmy, because you just remind me that there's still a lot of work to do to try and keep minds open and slow contemplation. But when you've been around whiskey as long as you have, I think you're entitled to your preferences, buddy. I think another wee Irish whiskey that I'm happy to have around. Let's put it that way. I think I couldn't get the 10-year-old, by the way, when I looked for it. But the single pot still variant and the single malt variant was widely available. A similar price, maybe £5 or so more for the single pot still. I think it was a wee bit more expensive than the single malt. But of course, I wanted to try the single malt. I've tried single pot still from Dingle in the past, just wee drops. The progression I've been monitoring has been their malt whiskey. Something that didn't really exist 10 years ago. Well, it did exist, but we couldn't buy it as whiskey, of course, because they've just released a 10-year-old. And in fact, I think they've been around for longer than 10 years. So that means it's time to move on to the English whiskey to finish on. I wonder if any of you would be able to guess what that could be. I've said it lots and lots in the past, and I'll say it lots and lots in the future, I'm sure. There's nothing guarantees good Scotch whiskey more than good English whiskey. If our southern neighbours are doing it well and getting really good results and able to put out high quality, integrity forward product here at fair prices, I always feel like, not just to do with the size of the market or whatever, although it's part of it, of course, but just the idea that we can't have English whiskey companies making it look like it's easy, right? It's just a wee joke. It's a tongue-in-cheek thing that I have. But it means that I'm constantly reaching out to try. I'm picking up various English distilleries. And over the course of the vPub, you've heard me talking about what used to be known as St. George's. It's the English Distilling Company now. You've heard me talking about Bimber, and you've heard me talk about Cotswolds. You've recently heard me talking about Circumstance. You've heard me, hopefully you've listened, and we've spoken about length at White Peak and Wireworks. But I think it might be the first time, and if I'm wrong, I'm sure that you know better than me, it might have been that I've held up a Spirit of Yorkshire release in the past before. But this is the English entry for tonight. First thing that strikes me, just looking at this, and if I go from memory, this is pure bourbon cask, right? I think it's all bourbon cask, but you can see it's just a lovely, lovely pale gold colour. This is from Spirit of Yorkshire. This is Filey Bay, 46% ABV. Look at the labelling here. Just the information that you need. Very clear. Filey Bay is the brand. Yorkshire Single Malt Whisky is the category. Flagship is the expression underneath. 70 cl, 46% volume, and the only other thing that's written on the front of that label is natural colour and non-chill filtered. It's not hard to do. They've added a wee back label for much more granular details and information should you be interested to read a wee bit about the whisky or the particular expression. This on the back says Yorkshire Single Malt Whisky, or Flagship Single Malt Whisky, is the essence of our distillery, created from field to bottle using 100% homegrown barley. It's light, creamy and fruity with flavours of citrus, caramel, honey and vanilla. Well, we'll be the judge of that, but thank you for guiding us. Made and bottled by the Spirit of Yorkshire. I don't know how to pronounce this. I think it's Hunmanby, North Yorkshire, and that's it. I am of the opinion, when I bought this, I was keen to buy this flagship one because it was their core range entry product, because the price was fantastic. I picked this up for 45 quid, I think I got this one at. But foil, none of these foil caps really open very, very well, do they? They never follow the perforations. 45 quid. Now, it's going to be It's not a statement, so it's going to have a single-digit aged whiskey in here. It's just understandable. But I do think this is the first time I'm going to be sipping a Spirit of Yorkshire product in the vPub. And it's taken too long. Because you know that the vPub as a dynamic is a two-way thing. I know that me, and especially in the solo sessions, it's just me talking, and a little bit of interaction. But I read your comments. I take the feedback from you, direct messages, Patreon messages, emails, all the stuff. And it does mean that from time to time, maybe not single recommendations, but you build up a library of, wow, there's a groundswell of support for this whiskey. I should check this out and things. So I am guided by you. I've been trying this whiskey at festivals, through pals, over the years. I've got one down there, which I think is I need to check what it is, but I know it's red. So it's an active cask. I want to say it's port cask or something, but it could be sherry. Can't remember now, but it's been a while since I've actually bought a core range product. That one down there was a lot more expensive than this as well. This is their flagship. This is Yorkshire, Spirit of Yorkshire Distillery doing what every distillery should do. Nail a core range, relatable, accessible product in there that you can do at reasonable scale. You can get out there at a reasonable price. It's a good representation of what you're all about, and people can connect with you through that core range anchor. And then you can get a bit playful and kind of feed off that hard spot in the middle, that hard anchor point. I think too many distilleries are kind of scattergunning and trying to find out what fits. This is just an immaculate, amazing explosion of pure ex-bourbon. I'm absolutely confident. Unlike that Dingle, this is pure bourbon. Nothing else in here to muddy the waters, pure bourbon. A wee cleanse of the palate. Maybe should have done these around in a different order, I think, but it doesn't matter. It's fine. 46% ABV. Orchard, creamy, sweet confectionery, butterscotch and caramel. Wee bit of kind of Werther's Original. Orchard, apples and pears. Lilies, white linen. Oh, you beauty. A wee bit of creamy fondant, but specifically like a Lee's Snowball. I know that's a very Scottish reference. So you've got the kind of vanilla fondant with a really kind of light chocolate shell, and then lots of desiccated coconut. So a lot of people are sensitive to coconut, especially when it comes to bourbon casks. I am not. I quite enjoy when I pick up coconut. But it's like a Lee's Snowball. Cheers, everyone. Spirit of Yorkshire. Filey Bay. Sweet. Sweeter than I expected, actually. A wee bit of youth in there too. A wee bit of creamy malt. A wee bit of barley in there. That kind of sense of grist and husk and, you know, the whole kind of vibes. Citrus coming in to join the orchard. Sweet lemon. It's a sweet whiskey. It's very sweet. Super soft. Perfect example of that thing I always say where people talk about, oh yeah, 46% is just a bit too hot for most people. You know, they need 40% and 43%, and that's why we need chill filter and things, and the mass market needs it softer. Nonsense. This is as soft and buttery as they come. This is still quite young whiskey, single-digit age statement, but there is no sharp, chilly heat ABV alcohol attack from this. The alcohol is there, it's present, it's given a little bit of kind of grip to things. But this is a soft, buttery, sweet whiskey. You know what? This is a wee bit, and I don't want to be rude to anyone, and I'm not sipping them side by side. A wee bit reminiscent to the Cotswold Signature, for example. They always have this lovely kind of buttery edge to things. This is Filey Bay, Spirit of Yorkshire are getting to a point, they're getting to a critical scale that they're soon going to have a core range out there with age statements. Now that Dingle are out there with a 10-year-old, Cotswolds, we're only a few years away from White Peak, Bimber, Spirit of Yorkshire, the Lakes, and yada, more and more and more. We're going to get to a point where the differentiators that Scotch has enjoyed in the past are eroded and gradually eroded. Familiarity of brand, maturity of stock, skills, traditions, all of these things are going to make it harder for Scotch to keep performing. Scotch we can only ever consider Scotch whisky to be made in Scotland. I think it's just an obvious statement to make. The only place that can make Scotch whisky is going to be Scotland. The producers, the distilleries that are here, they're the ones that's going to be able to continue to make Scotch. But I think that there's been a correction, and it's hurt a lot of perspectives and angles and parties and sectors and areas in Scotch whisky, especially in the last 2 years, because the category got a bit carried away. It played heavily on its strengths for the short term and wasn't taking any notice of the longer term. It's caught me off guard. And I don't think it's a stretch to imagine it's caught a lot of people out in the industry off guard as well. Because when I visited Sweden and went to Smogen and tasted the liquid that they're making and the quality and the fact that they're now able to put out a 12-year-old and approaching that plans for a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old, a 21-year-old, much like Francis at Daffmill, there has already been 12-year-old Swedish Smogen released to the market. The Ashkeim, the Golden Promise release, super, super precious liquid, made from Golden Promise, an 8-year age statement. There's just so many things out there that are happening quietly in the background as time marches on. And I know we've said it in the past, and we're going through a correction right now, but Scotch has been behaving like it's the only track in the jukebox. It's now, in a lot of areas, there's a lot of really, really integrity forward, fantastic distilleries that have not played the cynical game, that have worked out that they need to play a longer term game, and I think that those are the producers that we tend to be celebrating. However, there are lots of areas of Scotch whisky industry that I don't even think they're aware of the quality of the whisky that's coming from malt whisky coming from Ireland, malt whisky coming from England, from Tasmania, from Sweden, from all over continental Europe. They may be aware of America, but they can do anything. There's a real maverick thing, and most of the whiskies that's released in America, or a large swathe of them, let's say, they can't even be sold as whiskey in the UK because of the SWA regulations, the 3 years thing, right? They know about Asian whiskies, they know about that stuff, but I think they have no idea the quality, the value proposition, and the building experience, the building depth of maturing stock that is happening while we have slept. What say you? A grain of malt, and the distillery just turned 15. You'll be talking about, obviously you're in Sweden, you'll be talking about Smogen. Now 15 years old. Amazing. Anthony Lambert is saying, I have a Scottish mate here in Germany who would never touch an English whiskey. I had to trick him into drinking a Welsh whiskey by putting it in a different bottle. Scottish pride. Yeah, and I think that's, he's just, there's so much to unpack there. There really is. And it's not unique to Scotland. You know, it's just, what if it's better? He just doesn't want to know. He wants to be happy in his... I understand it completely. I have to work hard against that type of thinking myself, if I'm honest. Graham Fraser is celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 65 months with his pink barfly, saying, and enjoyed birthday drams in Edinburgh with pals tonight. It cannot be. It's Graham Fraser's birthday. Oh my goodness. Right. I'm getting the emoji out for that one, big guy. I have an English whiskey in the glass, and while I actually have to remind myself that you are an Englishman by birth, you live here amongst us. I love that you do, and I love what you do for whiskey and the Barflies community, buddy. Here's a bunch of Glencairn glasses and a bunch of heart emoji in the channel just to raise a glass to say many happy returns to the superstar that is Graham Fraser. Is it your birthday? Did I miss it? Cheers, Graham. Many happy returns, fella. How cool is that? And Klaus Falsgraf is celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 5 months, saying had a German and Scotch. One German to come. Enjoy it, buddy. Enjoy it. And thanks for being on theme tonight. Jimmy's saying, as we all know, Graham is just turning 39 years old. Yes, but he has the wisdom of 139 years old when it comes to whiskey. Highland Thames is saying, Aquavite just got home after a tasting. We'll be staying up to watch from the start on instant replay. Why don't you stay for a quiz? And then when the quiz is out the way, you can go back and listen to all the chitty chat about the Planet Scotch nonsense that we've had tonight. How does that suit you, Hamish? I've worked out the quiz over the last couple of weeks we've failed to hit a 10 out of 10. Certainly live, we've not had a 10 out of 10. I'm hoping that we'll maybe brought a wee bit of balance back into it, and maybe there's a chance for maybe the birthday boy Graham Fraser or somebody to manage to get a 10 out of 10 tonight. You never know. Listen, while we're on the topic of, I don't have a German whiskey on hand, but there is a German lady that I would like to wish many happy returns to. I'm going to go back to my Ashkai, my Swedish whiskey, and I'm going to raise a glass and happy birthday, many happy returns to Sabrina Benoit. She's not German, she's Belgian. She's Belgian. She's the super Belgian. She's a lady that walks everywhere. She's walked through Scotland multiple times. We always manage to just miss each other. Maybe it's never going to happen, Sabrina, but I think it might. I'll raise a glass to you and wish you many happy returns. I don't know if you're in tonight, but Sabrina, happy birthday. Cheers. I think I'm going to keep this. This is going to be my dram for the quiz. Wow. Graham Fraser is a 10 out of 10, says Jimmy Legg. Fantastic stuff. How are we doing for time? That's weird how it works. I'm not really looking at the time, but we're getting to the point where we can start to put the wheels on the quiz at the end. Listen, in the weeks ahead, there's going to be lots and lots of things happening around the channel, happening around everything. This weekend is the Oswas, the Only Scotch Whisky Awards nominations will be announced. Dramface will also announce its top 40 distilleries alongside, so it's going to be super interesting to see in a month's time how much overlap there is between the distillery, People's Choice, and the winner's ceremony on November 1st versus that. But we're now at a critical stage where we've got a big enough snapshot on the Dramface Top 40 to release another edition of that. That's happening now. It's working away in the background. And I've got events coming out of my ears right now. Trips that I'm planning, events to welcome you guys, not least in Glasgow, bottling projects going on. I think some of them have been able to hint about in things, and some of them have been able to share with patrons. So I'm hoping that I get some time with patrons on Sunday night to sit down and kind of decompress a little bit and share a bit more with you all on Sunday night. I'm looking forward to that and bring you all up to speed with all of the fun that's happening there. But in the meantime, bear with me. We just have to do it kind of bite at a time, chip at a time. My focus will always be on the weekly content. You know, it doesn't matter how busy things get and how much the challenges pile up and the workload in the background. Shouts for attention. This will be the priority. Hanging out with you guys for a couple hours of downtime and whiskey enjoyment on a Thursday night is the focus. It's the priority of it all. Thank you to all of you who indulge how busy I am and support what I am able to achieve, not just through the channel. This is the focus, of course, but on the back of this, everything that I'm able to hopefully make a positive contribution to whiskey. That's the dream, right? Andrew Dorr, good to see Andrew. He's saying, Bill, we'll be watching the replay later. Hope you're well and cheers. I am, Andrew. It's nice to welcome you in, buddy. Stay for the quiz and you can watch the start of it later. Stevie O is saying, Indri Trini in the glass. He's on theme tonight. Stevie, good for you, buddy. It's nice to have you in. Andy Hills is saying, defo Belgian and a lovely lady to spend time with. I'm glad I caught that in the end. Tim Donner Pask has filled it up with a fantastic emoji. Thank you, buddy. Let's get on with the quiz at the end. Let's see how we're doing. Have we got the quiz ready? I have got the quiz ready. Good. Gave myself a wee fright there that I hadn't teed it up. Remember, please stay. Have a bit of fun with this. Don't consider yourself... you don't need to know the answers to all of these because half the questions are designed to kind of push you to maybe pique your curiosity in a certain direction or something like that. It's always multiple choice. You can lean on the crowd if you want to, or you can do what a lot of you love to do. I think you like to switch the chat off and try and play along on your own and chime in what your score is in the comments or in the live chat a wee bit later. It's all intended to be fun more than anything. How serious you want to take this is entirely up to you. I try and make everything as optional as possible. Good luck, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with me to the quiz at the end. It's always fun to see the numbers drop off at the end. That's okay. I understand completely. Thanks for watching. If you dip out for the quiz, you're welcome here, and thank you. Cheers. Righto. Question 1. Good luck, everyone. Which of the following is a requirement for the definitions of Scotch malt whisky? So in order to define Scotch malt whisky, which of these is an actual SWA requirement? A, it must be matured and bottled in Scotland. B, it must be matured in oak casks. Or C, it must be matured for a minimum of 3 years and 1 day. You're going to have a busy weekend with the Oswas and the Loch and Aquavitae. It's more than that, Tim. I'm meeting up with some folk in town on Saturday night. It's going to be late, unfortunately, because I've got the Online Scotch Whisky Awards. It's a bit messy. There's a lot of things all happening at the same time, and it's difficult to parse it all out, but it's just the way it is. I do my very, very best to meet up with people when they come into Glasgow, but it's becoming harder and harder going forward. I need to remember how much time I'm taking away from the family, as much fun as it is. But it's the Oswas on Saturday, then I'm out on Saturday night. There's a lock-in on Sunday night. And I think in the week ahead, I've got Monday night that's a non-whiskey night, and the rest of it is... It's just the way that it is right now. Falscraft is saying ABC, but that 1 day is a myth. It's just 3 years, Aquavitae. AB says Rick Johnson. Good to see you. And Rick, Graham Young is here saying ABC. Excuse me. Yes, we're back. It's saying ABC. Gabriel is saying AB, not C. Daisy is saying A. Good to have you in, Daisy. Malt Minion Chuck is here. Good to have you, Chuck. Yes, but it's nice to have you playing along. Gav's Drams, my pal in Edinburgh. Gav, I always love to see you. And buddy, I hope you're keeping well. Tom B is saying A, B, not C. Wow. Okay. Wow. AB indeed, says Pedro. I can tell you that there is a banana skin. So the reason the banana skin in the first question, sometimes it's a freebie so that everyone gets a free point because all the answers are correct. Unless there's a banana skin there, probably you need to, but I can't catch you out. Absolutely spot on. The one-day thing is an absolute myth. There are some administrations, some organizations, some policies that are in place that do want to make sure that it's 3 years and 1 day, but that's just in case there's a mistake made. It's down to individual company policy rather than definitions or regulations. So it's 3 years is the definition. Matured and bottled in Scotland, that's only relevant to malt whiskey, bulk whiskey, blended whiskey. Obviously, that doesn't matter so much with that. It must be matured in oak cask we already covered tonight. So there you go. A and B was what I was looking for on that one. Question 2. Which of the following distilleries makes or has been known to make deliberate efforts to maintain a waxy character in their spirits? Now, we would love to think that it's because we all love it as a single malt, but usually if a distillery is trying to preserve a waxy style in their spirit, it's because it's in high demand by blenders. Which of these has made deliberate attempts and is known for making deliberate attempts to have a waxy character? A, Deanston in Southern Highlands, B, Dilluan in Speyside, or C, Dilwhinnie, either smack bang in the middle of the Highlands or on the very west end of the Speyside region. According to the Scotch Malt Whisky Yearbook, it's Speyside, so we go with that. A, Deanston, B, Dilluan, C, Dilwhinnie. Which of those distilleries have made and continue to make, or are well known for making, a deliberate attempt to maintain a waxy character in their spirit? Anthony Lambert is saying he's going with the A team. That could almost have been a banana skin, says James. There's no banana skin there, buddy. I'm hoping to follow your path to attend today. Ian Bruce is following Brian Cabayas. Brian, it's good to see you. And Ian Bruce, it's good to see you. And Tom Elmer is in as well. Fantastic. MJ Rodden. Wow. Mark Watt is playing along as well. He's going for B on this one. Eric Waite Whiskey Stuggies is saying only single malt has to be bottled in Scotland. Other whiskies can be shipped in a neutral container and bottled overseas. I think is that. I hope that's what I just got across there with the first question. All right, here we go. I can tell you that Deanston and Dilluan have both made deliberate attempts to enhance their waxy character, and it has been in both occasions, arguably for the single malt, but mostly because it becomes super precious as blending stock. So a wee bonus for you out there. So if you answered A or B, you're absolutely right. It could be that the same practice has been tried at Dilwhinnie, but it's not famous for it. It's not known for it. Not as far as I'm aware anyway. Dilwhinnie for me is a much more honey rather than wax. Question 3. The Vanguard was a recent launch from where and by whom, celebrating sensory aspects such as synesthesia. This is a legitimate recent release. I would like to know from where and by whom. A, from Campbelltown by what whiskey? B, Fettercairn by Greg Glass. Or C, Deanston by Julianne Fernandez. The Vanguard series was a recent launch from where and by whom, celebrating sensory aspects such as synesthesia. It doesn't help that Mark Watt is actually in tonight making statements like, imagine synesthesia in whiskey, right? A and B are the answers to all questions tonight. Rick, you can continue if you like along that theme, but we're looking specifically where and from whom did the Vanguard series come from this week? Sharmila Suze, Charlie is in. Good. Oh, no, it's not Charlie. It's not Charlie. It's Sharmila Suze. It's a completely different person altogether, but going with B for the crowd. Good to have you in, Sharmila. I hope you're doing well. Grainer Malt is saying going with the crowd on B. Boomer is in. Tom B. Both Boomer and Tom B going for Bs, interestingly. MJ Rod and Rick Johnson also going for B, but Jimmy Jazz is going for an A. Bruce Bernard, Brian Cabias, Graham Young, where's Roy? Roy in Norway. I went all the way to Norway and I didn't get to hang out with Roy over me, or not this time. It'll need to be another time. I need to be Scotland or Germany, right, Roy? Okay, I can tell everybody that it is, of course, Fetter Cairn and Greg Glass. It turns out, and I didn't know this, listen, I've never met Greg. I'm hoping that I can meet Greg one day. But I feel like the amount of times I've mentioned this on the vPub, I'm a big fan of. It doesn't matter whether it's the Whiskey Works project, it doesn't matter what he's achieved at Compass Box, what he's doing at Fetter Cairn right now, where he may be taking the direction of Jura ever, or some expressions of Jura. I just feel like I just would like to speak to the guy. And I've discovered this week that a little bit like our friend who's in tonight, Mark Watt, he I was just about to say suffers from, that wouldn't be the right thing. But let's say the Vanguard series is part of a sensory exploration that touches upon topics that's close to him, such as synesthesia. So if you answered B, that's the answer I was looking for. Graham Fraser, I think it was Graham that released it in the Barflies page on Aquavitae, Barflies on Facebook. It might not have been Graham, but those stories are usually from the big one. Question 4. This week, specifically on Saturday morning at 6 a.m, Dramface will release its latest top 40 rankings. But based on how many updates since the last snapshot way back in May 2024? That's a horrible question, actually, for a number 4 in here, but hopefully you can navigate it with a wee bit of canny common sense. It's coming out on Saturday because we've reached 707 new refreshed votes to match the vPub launch count. So it was originally a project I did here before I passed it over to Dramface because I realised that was just a more appropriate place for it to permanently be. So it's going to be after 707 votes. Or is it going to be B, around 1,000, because that's a nice solid number? Or is it going to be C, however many we counted over a year? Hopefully you can navigate this one. Falsgraph is saying that might be a pretty popular vPub. Falsgraph, it's not on 707 live people. It's based on 707 votes pledged, or 1,000 votes pledged, or however many votes were pledged over the year since the last snapshot. You were on the wrong coast of Norway, Aquavitae, but I'll see you soon. I know, we were just too far south for you, weren't we, buddy? We will see each other soon. Oh dear, I'm going to give you all the opportunity to change your mind. If you've answered one of the things and you've not read the question and the answer, I've said May 2024. We're clearly in October 2025. A year has not passed. Come on. Falsgraph is saying, oh no, Aquavitae, that was about the synesthesia guy. Okay. Got you, Klaus. I can tell you that 707 was the original vote count when I did it. We collected it for a few days in the run up to the vPub. Then we passed it over to Dramface, and I think we've been about between 1,000 and 1,500 votes, more or less. And that's what we've done again this time. We've taken the last 1,000 votes. May 2024 to October 2025 is not a year. So that would have been a lot of lost votes and a lot of information ignored and things. And what we're going to do is kind of take it as a rolling 1,000 votes going forward. So that might end up being annual, might be a bit quicker, it might be a bit longer than that. But here's how it works. You don't need to go in and make a fresh vote. You just need to go in and edit or tidy up. And even if you don't change any of the entries and you don't change your mind on anything you put in there, You just press submit, and that's counted as a fresh vote. If you're interested in the top 40 rankings being updated more regularly, all you have to do is just keep on top of your preferences and submit a vote, and we'll be able to achieve that more regularly as well. So Saturday this weekend, you'll see the top 40 rankings updated. There is movement. That's all I'll say. Question 5. It's always the picture question here. We've got some fat stills. These look to me like onion-shaped stills. Not much reflux being harnessed at this particular point of whiskey production, but I'm not going to ask you where this is. I need you to know not only where this is, but who owns the distillery where this is. Hence the asshat. Is it A, Diageo, B, Isle of Arran, or C, Inverhouse? Who are the owners of this distillery? Justin Wan is saying, phew, thanks, Aquavite, lol. Oh, did you need to be reminded how to count a year from May 2024? Justin Wan is now going to go for B on maybe you're answering the last one. Graham Fraser is suggesting a few votes. That's right. 3 out of 4 because I don't understand, says Jimmy Legg. Mark Watt is saying I change my top distilleries on an hourly basis. I get exactly where you're coming from. whatever the whiskies you've tried in the last week, right? Brian Cabayas is saying not lag. Pedro is saying not 100% sure, but I think it's C, Balblair. Graham Fraser saying this came up at Glasgow Whisky Club on Tuesday. He's just getting the inside track, isn't he? Lachlan is saying it doesn't look like lag. Sharmila Suze is saying change to C, going with C, says Gene Kelly. And Rick Johnson is saying, shouldn't Graham Fraser get an automatic birthday 10 out of 10 tonight? I think that's a great idea. I think he should. I think he deserves it. All right, I can tell you that you're correct. Lag is famous for having these big fat stills, right? But we are not in lag. This is a higgledy-piggledy, really close together layout here at Balblair, which of course is owned by Inverhouse. It's not lag, it's not Diageo. So it's not owned by Isle of Arran, it's Inverhouse, and it is Balblair. Can't make it to Glasgow this year, says Justin Wan. Take a dram from me, my friend. Buddy, we'll raise a glass in your absence. It's nice to have you here on a Thursday, and we can look forward to the next time you can make the significant trip from Hong Kong, buddy. Cheers, Justin. Thanks for the dram. Question 6, okay. Things get a bit tricky from here on in. Sorry, I just zoomed out on this Balblair scene so that you could see it a bit better, just see the scale and the shape of those big fat stills at Balblair. But question 6, from here on in, it's going to get a bit trickier. Bruichladdich still have plans to reinstate their in-house maltings, probably Saladin boxes we hear, but it's not going to happen for a couple of years. We've heard that that's due to limitations on the grid, the electricity grid specifically in Islay. So it's not just about kind of roads and real estate and all that stuff. There's lots of things it's going to take a while to put into place. So it's going to take a couple of years before they realise that dream, if it's still going ahead. But I'm asking you here tonight, when did they last have in-house maltings? When did Bruichladdich last malt their own grain on site? Was it in the 1940s, or was it in the 1960s, or was it in the 1980s? A, 1940s, B, 1960s, C, 1980s. I can run on a treadmill if they need more power at Laddie, says Jimmy Legg. Love-hate with Inverhouse after they rebranded their wonderful distilleries. It gets worse, Tim. The recent rebranding by Inverhouse for Annoch and Speyburn is nothing short of heartbreaking. It's against the grain. It's going in the exact opposite direction. Probably they'll be financially... they might make a financial success out of it. I don't know. Just as it was starting to get more and more of a cult kind of following. Maybe it's not what they're after. Of course, it's not what they're after, but it's a shame. Tom Elmer is saying all my favourite distilleries are on Isla or in Campbelltown. Funny how we end up in those cul-de-sacs, right, Tom? It's amazing to have you in here, buddy. Okay, all the answers pouring in. B, just guessing. B, going with the crowd. Hitching a ride with B. B, 60s makes sense. Where's Roy saying B? Looks like the majority of you have gone with the sensible middle ground and killed it. Superb. Early 60s, 1961, I think, was the last time that they took care of any malting in-house themselves. I think it makes a big difference. It's going to be interesting to see the difference it makes when it does finally get back to Brooklady. Question 7. As previously touched upon, the Cardhu controversy ended up contributing to what? Sorry, ended up contributing specifically what to the Cardhu brand over the following 2 decades as, coincidentally, malt demand rocketed. So what was the net effect post Cardhu controversy? What effect did it have on the Cardhu brand? A, it helped to seriously damage it. B, it had little measurable impact. Or C, it turbocharged demand for Cardhu. So the controversy that we spoke about earlier tonight, where we showed you 2 pictures of a Cardhu that was labelled as a single malt, 12 years old, and another one that was a Cardhu pure malt, 12 years old. One of them was Cardhu, and the other one was made up of malt from a mix of other Diageo distilleries. Deceit of the most obvious levels, right? And it's just, and Diageo tried to get away with it. Horrendous. And yet the SWA is claiming that Glen Glenora Distillery in Nova Scotia, near Inverness in Canada, is the one playing funny buggers. It's just too much. What was the net effect? What happened to Cardhu after that? It wasn't the only reason that this happened, but this happened to Cardhu after the event. Should be a huge banana skin here by the looks of things. My goodness. When the Cardhu controversy came around, Cardhu was very popular in most markets across the world, and it hovered around 3rd, 4th, or 5th place in gross volumes when it came to Scotch malt whisky sales. In 2022, the last year that I have figures for, it was not even in the top 10. In fact, it's flirting with sliding outside of the top 15. While it didn't damage the actual overall volumes, it severely lost ground against all its competitors who were in a positive incline at that time. Cardhu struggled. Cardhu remains one of the most popular Scotch single malt whiskies in France and also in Spain. That's its main markets. But in the rest of the world, its reputation struggled to recover from that mess. So that could have taken a few people out of the picture there, but Cardhu is now languishing, vaguely making it into the top 15 distilleries, but it used to be fighting for a spot in the top 3 way back 20 years ago. Question 8. Built around the original DCL Classic Malts of 1988, Diageo extended the concept in 2002, and they added the hidden malts, and that consisted of Caol Ila, Clynelish, Glenelgan, and which other Diageo distillery? A, Knockandu, B, Athrusk, C, Glenord. So they extended the range. Of course, they had things like Talisker already out there, part of the classic malts. They had Dalwhinnie's part of the classic malts. But because it was so successful, they started to pilfer, let's say, some of the flora and fauna releases in order to do a extended range that they called the hidden malts. That was Caol Ila, Clynelish, Glenelgan, and which other one got the new branding treatment at that time? Few people talk about Cardhu these days, or none. Absolutely true. There's been a couple of special releases recently. Their 200-year anniversary one that came out, I remember that had to be 2024, right? Yeah, Cardhu's famously one of the first distilleries. So it's either 1823 or 1824. So it would have been 200 years in 2023 or 2024. But anyway, they brought out a 200-year anniversary. And I thought, that's really cool. I'm interested in that. And I believe it was non-age statement. Regardless, it had no interest for me because of the price and 40% ABV. I dodged it. Shame, because I think it's one of these distilleries that's nice to connect with when you get the chance. There's been a couple of really nice special releases, which makes it quite a rare thing. Everyone going for the majority of you, at least a few others, going outside of it, but suggesting that it's C. A Thrusk was famously the first of the singletons. Cardhu is also another popular malt in Spain and France. The one I'm looking for tonight was the hidden malt of Glenord. Didn't last too long. It quickly replaced a Thrusk, actually, as the singleton. Glenord, Glendullan and Dufton are now the three singletons making up the same brand. But originally Glenord was one of the hidden malts. We are starting to see some attrition now. How many people are holding on to an 8 out of 8? Falsgraf, nice work, Falsgraf. Oh, we're losing some people. Andy Hills is on an 8 as well. Graham Fraser's on an 8. Ian Bruce is on an 8. Okay, we're in good shape. Mark Watt is also on an 8. This is getting better. So it looks like we're still in shape for somebody to make it over the line with a 10 intact. Question 9. Reefton, Scapegrace, Wahiki, Lammermuir are all malt distilleries in which country? Reefton, Scapegrace, Wahiki and Lammermuir. Is it A, South Africa, B, New Zealand, or C, Canada? Which country has those distilleries? That Smogen, that Ashkine is just delicious. Sounds like Hawaii Aquavite, Reefton, Scapegrace, Wahiki, and Lammermuir. I get it. It does sound a wee bit like it could be Hawaiian vibes, but it's not. Some people following other people. Rick Johnson is admitting that he's following Ian Bruce. I think that's absolutely fine. Nice of you to admit. If you put Australia as an option, I might have tripped. Lol, says Justin Wan. Oh, well, so he's given some clues away there. I can tell you that most of you are absolutely right. Boomer is saying he loves Scapegrace. New Zealand is what I'm looking for. And actually, the first Phil Whiskey video that's gone out this week was after he visited Waiheke. I think it's Waiheke. Waiheke is the pronunciation, I think. What video did I just see Waiheke mentioned in, says James Graham of Vault. He pointed out exactly that. I was mindful enough to not trip up and mention the distillery when I was talking about it earlier. But yeah, that's the first Phil Whiskey video that went out this week. Okay, coming into this at the end, we're looking for those of you still on a 9. There are a few. Andy Hills hanging on. Falsgraf. Ian Bruce. Mark Watt. Okay, here comes the asshat. I've been having some really good mileage out of these questions at the end. I know it's, too much repetition makes Aquavite a dull boy, but I'm enjoying it. Here we go. How many operational Scotch malt distilleries feature BAL in the name? B-A-L, BAL. Operational Scotch malt distilleries. About the same number as A, those featuring Spey, B, those featuring Ben, and C, those featuring Clyde. Now, this should be a little bit easier for you after the last couple of weeks because the answers are the same, which means that the asshat is kind of nullified a little bit because you probably know the A, B, and C, depending on how good your memory is. So it's not an asshat then. I'm just simply asking you how many distilleries have Bal in their name. Lassie Hjort Otsman is already in there with the answer. With his answer, at least, the chat fills up with asshat emojis. Pedro, Stevie Off, Falscraft, Tim Dunnerpass Whiskey, Rick Johnson, Jerry Miller. Getting into the mood of it. Christoph is saying, I can't count that fast. Okay. All over the place. Typical asshat stuff. Brian Cabayas is on an A. Nicholas is on a B, whereas Falscraft is on a C. Rick Johnson on an A. Nicholas B. Wow. Okay, this could be a struggle. This could be a struggle. I can try and help you. I'll remind you of the numbers from last week. Spey counts 3 distilleries. What is that? Glen Spey, Speyburn, and Speyside, right? Ben 4, Ben Romack, Ben, I don't remember all the Bens. Ben Nevis, Ben Rinnes, something else. There's a 4th Ben. And Clyde was obviously Strathclyde and Clydeside. So we're asking about Bal. Does that help you? A grain of malt is saying B for show. Okay. I can tell you you're spot on. Well done, James. Let's see if Mark got it. Let's see if Andy got it. Let's see if the other guy's shooting for a 10 out of 10 tonight get it. Did anybody scrape it over the end? Did anybody get to a 10? And tell you that the 4 Bal distilleries are Balmainic, Balvenie, Ballinadalach, and as already mentioned a couple of times tonight, Balblair. Come on, how are we doing? Andy Helse is celebrating. He's saying, yeah, dancer, with a 10 out of 10. Superb, Andy. Well done. You'll be skipping off to bed happy this evening. I'm looking. Strathclyde is not a single malt. Oh, no, that's true. That is true. But does that say single malt in the question? Does it? Operational Scotch malt distilleries. Oh, you're right. So there maybe is another one. Is there another one that's not Strathclyde? Now you want me to remember all of these things. Let's see. Let's see a second. I think Mark's probably right, isn't he? Let's see how we get on here. Clyde. Clydeside. Strathclyde. Yeah. Mark's right. I mean, it doesn't affect the answer. However, the rules of the vPub quiz at the end are, if somebody's able to pick apart the thing to claim the question and answer as a bogey, everybody can claim it. It's my fault. It's my mistake. It's happened in the past. And it might mean that tonight, somebody that otherwise might have not. Mark's already saying, I will take a 10 out of 10, though. Congratulations, Mark. Petehead is congratulating the 10s. Dunnerpass Whiskey got a 9, but he's celebrating a 10, saying close enough. Falscraft got a 10 at the last second, so he's in. Ian Bruce got a 10. Congratulations, Ian. Graham Fraser also celebrating a 10. Mark Watts taking his 10. He took it much earlier than he mentioned that. Aye. So, if anybody was on a 9 and the asshat tripped them up, I don't think there were any, though. You can claim it, and it's a 10. It might not feel as great as a legitimate 10. It's down to my mistake rather than yours. But a 10's a 10, and you should take it, and you should celebrate it, and you deserve it. I'm petitioning for a 9 out of 10 emoji. I keep getting that, says Justin Wan. That's quite nice. Graham Fraser is saying a 10 out of 10 on my birthday. Once more, happy birthday. You didn't need to be gifted a 10 out of 10 on your birthday, buddy. You just went right ahead and earned it. And I hope you earn the very, very best of birthday weeks as well. Cheers, Graham. Great intro to the weekend. Looking forward to the Sunday lock-in, says Jean Kelly. I'm looking forward to welcoming you there. That's for all patrons, regardless of the level that you join Patreon at. It's Sunday. You'll get a link. I try and do it earlier on Sunday at 9 p.m, but depending on family commitments and things, sometimes it's the regular 9:45 time. I'll try and do it for 9 o'clock on Sunday so that it's a wee bit earlier for everyone, and that'll give me a chance to just hang out with you all and have a wee relaxed behind the scenes, all the stuff that's going on in the background. And hopefully I've made some progress from where I am today and where I'm going to be on Sunday in order for me to give you the very latest up-to-the-minute information. I am going to pour a wee drop more of the whiskey that I have to say blew my expectations out the window. That's way better than it has any right to be, I believe. I mean, it might take a few more years for it to build its complexity and its layers and things like that, but the balance of the malt still being intact, and from a port cask, I was expecting not great stuff. But that's the surprise of tonight, that Wobbs Harbour from New Zealand. What a banger. Cracker. Well, let's see what you're saying before we go, Jean Kelly. Thank you, Jean. Jimmy Legacy just found out that Mark Watt is a true whiskey genius, of course, because he agrees with me and no other reason, says Jimmy Leg. Justin Mann is saying, great session, Roy. I'm sleep deprived, but I don't regret staying up for the whole vPub. Hopefully you can tune it. We can tune in again next week. Slanch everyone. Good night, Justin. You can sleep. Please, buddy, go and get some sleep. Sharmila is saying, thanks for another enjoyable evening, Aquavita, and good night. Thank you for being here, Sharmila. It's always a pleasure to welcome you. Pierre is saying, and with that, I'm calling it a day. I'm going to hit the sack. Pierre, oh, that's his thing. I'm hitting the sack now. I'm calling it a day. I'm out, parachute, done, on, out. Thanks as always for organising Aquavita, and to all of you seeing the Oswis the Oswis is Saturday, and the lock-in is on Sunday. So a lot of you are going to be sick of seeing my face over the course of this weekend. Pedro is saying, have an early morning at the other Ben Riak. That's Ben Riak. Thank you, Pedro. And we'll have to leave a bit earlier. Always great to tag along Barflies and Aquavita. Thank you for joining in tonight, Pedro. Michael C. Aquavita, thank you for another great vPub, Michael. I'm just welcoming you for the first time. Looking forward to the nominations at the weekend. Thank you for the Oswas. Thank you for supporting and participating in it, Michael. I'm glad you're looking forward to the weekend, my friend. Jimmy Legg has bought 10 Aquavita memberships for 10 random Barflies out there. Jimmy, thank you very much for your generosity, my friend, and thank you to all the Barflies for keeping the vPub completely ad-free. Daisy's saying, thank you, Roy, for another great vPub. I have a list of whiskies to try. Good night, all, and see you either Sunday or next week. Thank you, Daisy. Andy is saying, we'll join you for the lock-in from my Glasgow hotel Sunday. Feels Hells with at home Fab vPub this evening. Oh, yeah. Andy, listen, good luck with the upcoming exams and New Horizons, my friend. I wish you the very best, Andy. Cheers to you. Lachlan is saying, thanks, Roy. Looking forward to Sunday, and thanks, folks, for having a good evening. Lachlan, brilliant to have you here, as always, buddy. My pal in Sweden, Graham Mott, is saying, see you Sunday. Rick Johnson is saying, thanks for a lovely Thursday. See you Sunday. Roy, 28 sleeps. He's counting down the times to Glasgow. Lots and lots of chats coming in here. I don't feel I can let you all go. Come on. Tom Elmer is saying, I'll try to remember to tune in for lunch on Sunday. Thank you, Tom. Ian Bruce is saying the 10 making up for watching the Dons lose again, getting up early to see them defeated. I caught one of the teams losing tonight. I don't know what happened after that. We had 3 Scottish teams in Europe tonight. It's a shame that Aberdeen have lost as well. Fastcraft is saying, no, your face is a nice one. Christoph is saying, thanks and good night. Jean Kelly saying, Oswald season should be the 5th season officially. It is the 5th Oswald as well. I have a lot of new bottles, says Mike Molasses. Good to see you, Mike. So I'm happy to see more of your face, Aquavita. Ben Zhao is saying, Slangivaroy Aquavita. This is Ben Demon Hunter, name change. Oh, I need to remember that. Ben Zhao. Same logo, Ben. Thank you for the continuity. Never tired of that face, Aquavita. The attitude is a bit questionable. Thank you, Jimmy. Andy Hills is saying, cheers, Roy. And Anthony Lambert is saying, see you all on Sunday. I've stopped shouting. I got a 10 by then. Fantastic, Anthony. Listen, I've enjoyed hanging out tonight talking about things that we don't often spend time upon or dwell on the vPub. But if we are chasing flavour, if we're chasing a desire and a love for whiskey, you know, sometimes that pleasure, that spark, that new horizon can come from a glass of something, and it just might be that it's not a Scotch. I think where we are today and the way that things are shaping up for the future, the chances of that happening is greater year by year by year. I hope the end result is a higher minimum entry level of quality for everyone involved. Looking forward to hanging out with you on Saturday for the Long Scotch Whisky Award nomination shows. Should be an interesting one. Looking forward to hanging out with all the patrons on Sunday night. And if not, maybe I'll get to welcome you back here a week from now at a regular Thursday night spot. Let me raise this delicious glass of New Zealand single malt whiskey and remind you all that you're very dearly loved. And until then, Slán Siva. Thank you.